Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a heading into the long weekend edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Packed show coming up. And of course, we will finish with a marble race. So for everyone kicking it on the YouTube stream, make sure you're sticking around to the end for your chance to win our version of the Masters Green Jacket, the very illustrious Winnipeg Sports Talk Canadian Club hoodie. We've got lots to get to, as I mentioned. We are packed. Bombers are on their way this afternoon to Calgary to take on the Stampeders tomorrow. Cannot wait for the 6 p.m. kickoff from McMahon Stadium. Ed Tait from BlueBombers.com is going to jump on. Depth chart released earlier today. We'll jump into that, get the little bit of the vibe around the team, and take a look at this matchup and a rematch of that thriller a couple Fridays ago here in Winnipeg at IG Field. There's a lot to talk about with our good friend Darren Dunn. Manitoba Derby was announced yesterday with the big press conference at Assiniboia Downs. Monday night is the biggest race of the year at the Downs with the Derby ready to go in race number 6. But we'll also talk to Darren about sort of the fallout from that controversial race last Wednesday, which we mentioned too. And Mike McIntyre's got a big piece in the Free Press about it today. Darren not particularly pleased at how the regulator handled the investigation, shall we say. So we'll touch on that and take a look ahead to the big one Monday night, the Manitoba Derby, the 74th running with Double D. We do have to get to some NHL offseason talk. Murat of the Athletics going to join us a little later on. And with NFL training camps open all around the league, Hacksaw is back. Lee Hacksaw Hamilton in hour number 2 before we drop the marbles and get you off for 3 days off in the August long weekend. So welcome to everyone. You podcast listeners, if you do ever have the opportunity to jump on your podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, and give us a 5-star rating and a review, always helps us grow the channel. And of course, for people that are checking us out on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It's completely free. And hit the thumbs up while you're at it for today's episode. We always appreciate that. Speaking of appreciation, thanks so much to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Our friends at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health, F Apparel, Aikens Lake, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, and of course our friends over at Boston Pizza and Assiniboia Downs. Let's get to it. We got a signing to talk about in the NHL. We've got a game from last night in the CFL to kick off the week in the 3-down league. And Michael Remis making an appearance last night on the American Association's broadcast of the Goldeyes game as the Fish continue their homestand. Remo, what's going on? How did it go last night?
That was a bucket list event for me. American Association on their Facebook page, they have a game of the week. I joined broadcaster Carter Woodiall for innings 2 and 3. I really didn't know what I was going to get into, but I just went to the hits and pulled out the Home Run Derby trophy. I was like, did you know that at Shaw Park I actually won the Media Home Run Derby back at the All-Star game?
Of course you did. How long did it take for you to get into that? 2 minutes? 3?
Half it. I think after the first half inning, I was like, oh yeah, I can talk about it. Because we're talking about, I guess, the All-Star game. It just happened. And talking about Shaw Park, like when memorable games and moments. And so it was so much fun. I had never really been on a game because we're kind of doing like a podcast while the game is going. So I got to let him do the play-by-play. I missed there were 2 homers in the first inning. Too bad I wasn't on those, but I brought out a lot of props. I was pushing Carrot Top territory here. I showed off our podcast trophy too.
Nice. As a matter of fact, Carter, this is the site of one of my greatest athletic achievements, winning right here the Media Home Run Derby for 2014. We got a good little Goldeyes themed show today. You got the Fish hat on. I got the jersey on right now, and I'm actually going to pick up one of the new ones, I think, this weekend. Goldeyes are at home all week, and I'm going to be heading out there tonight. Looks like beautiful day for a ball game.
I was talking about going tonight as well to the Goldeyes.
Well, let's
might
make it
see you
happen.
there. Yeah, we
let's
should
make
talk.
it happen.
We should
Gonna
talk.
get a few of the fellas if you want to join or get the crew. You let me know, and we will set that up. I'm looking forward to the game. And they finished up winning the series against the Chicago Dogs in first place. That was nice. And now I believe it's the Lake County Dockhounds that are in tonight. But anyways, tonight, tomorrow, Sunday afternoon for the Gold Eyes. We mentioned tomorrow, Valor FC playing at 2:00, and then the Bomber game on the road in Calgary at 6:00. So some great sporting options for people over the next few days. Eddie Tait's going to join us, and we'll kind of dive into the Bombers and maybe touch on last night's game. Tonight, of course, BC and Saskatchewan going on. That'll be a real interesting game. We'll hit on that in the Coolbet lines. But Remo, let's get right to it. The big story today, broken by our man, Kevin Weeks, the People's Insider, just dropped a video of him beside a Socrates statue, along with the news that he is reporting the Anaheim Ducks are close to signing free agent defenseman John Klingberg, one of the top defensemen on the free agent market, and certainly the remaining free agents, to a 1-year deal for $7 million, or in and around $7 million. This is a fascinating contract in that, there was a real scarcity of, high-end defensemen. And I think everyone assumed, John Klingberg was originally asking reportedly for like 8x8 from the Dallas Stars. So for him to get a $7 million deal, AAV's great, but on a 1-year deal, it just simply shows them that he and his agent had to go to plan B. And I find it fascinating that the Ducks are the team to sign him, because this isn't really a team that is contending, but it helps them get to the salary cap floor. And obviously, if the Ducks are not a playoff team, which I don't think many people expect them to be this season, John Klingberg will be a very, very valuable asset for the Ducks to flip at the deadline. And this is sort of an investment in future assets for the cost that they were going to have to spend anyways to make sure that they were cap compliant and above the floor.
Yeah, I joked with you off air that they're basically buying a first-round pick with this signing. And for Dallas, it gets you to the cap floor. You got a top defenseman. It's only a 1-year contract. And again, you can flip him at the deadline if you're not in a playoff spot. For John Klingberg, we talked about this earlier this week. He fired his agent. What hadn't signed was one of the top defensemen available. Signed with Newport Sports, and he takes probably was looking for the 1-year deal with the most money. Going to Anaheim on the West Coast, that's a plus too. So, and maybe he gets traded to a contender at the deadline. So I think you're probably really disappointed that you didn't get a long-term deal, but you get $7 million for 1 season, and you're going to try it again next year, with maybe more teams have more flexibility, and you have what you believe is more competent agent handling, your contract negotiations. So didn't work out the way he thought it would, but I think in the end, it'll work out okay for him next year, you would think.
Well, listen, as long as he gets a big deal next year and has a good season. If he gets injured, if he sucks this year, maybe the opportunity has passed. I do wonder, and we'll probably never know, what was on the table in the league that was maybe turned down at the beginning of free agency or leading into it. Because when the money's gone, it's gone. This is not the major leagues where you can just go into the luxury tax and hold your nose and pay a little bit of extra. It is a hard cap right now, and the cap is as flat as it is, which has made, the cap assets and the ability to bring on players for good teams incredibly scarce. And then you've got teams towards the bottom of the league, like the Anaheim Ducks, that, I think in a lot of ways, Pat Verbeek deserves a lot of credit for, manipulating their cap space into a player that will be good in the short term. Doesn't probably have a long-term future there, although they'll have the opportunity to re-sign him if he fits in very well and they like it. But I would expect that John Klingberg. Can we get the trade bait board already up right now, Remo, for the deadline?
Whose first round pick can we match with John Klingberg? Is the first round pick going to be on there? Who has one?
What about cap space? Whose cap space will be on that list in the top 10 as well?
Anaheim's got a lot of cap space. The Anaheim or Cap Friendly hasn't updated yet, but I forgot that they signed Frank Vetrano and Ryan Strome too. So they've been busy. I forgot. It's been a couple weeks since it opened. I've kind of forgot about all these. It was so crazy that day. And yeah, they signed Isaac Lundestrom as well to a 2-year RFA. So I wonder if they do. And I'm kind of surprised they haven't re-signed Sonny Milano. I don't know what he's waiting for. Cap space isn't holding them back. Like, where's he gonna go?
Well, I mean, he might have some other options. Maybe here in Winnipeg. Maybe. And this is the thing. I mean, we've talked before about the Jets' predicament when it comes to getting free agents, and sometimes you have to overpay. I would imagine the Jets have been in on a few players that, certainly we heard Ken report that Danton Hyman was one of the guys that they were interested in, had an offer on the table that would pay him significantly more than the 1-by-1 deal that he took to stay with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But many of those deals are on the table, and I wouldn't even be surprised when it comes back to, and we'll talk about this with Murat Reem. I mean, for all the hand-wringing about the lack of significant moves by the Winnipeg Jets this year, I would imagine there's been a myriad of trades that have been discussed, some prices that have been established that are available for Kevin Cheveldayoff, and at this point, believing that they need to hold on until they can do better for these assets going forward. And in a lot of ways, it seems like it's a bit of a staring match between some teams right now, and I'd imagine the Winnipeg Jets will be in there. But I think there's no doubt that there is a lot more work that needs to be done. But timing in these situations is often everything, and the timing was amazing for the Anaheim Ducks to get a player like John Klingberg on a 1-year deal, which will turn into be a real significant asset as we get closer to that NHL trade deadline. And then, of course, teams that don't have the cap space right now to sign Klingberg can get him in, only paying his salary for the final 20-25 games of the year, and then have him as part of a boosted squad going into a Stanley Cup playoff run.
I wonder if the floodgates open now for some of these other free agents we're waiting to sign. Paul Stastny, Bill Kessel. Are we going to hear the official announcement about Bergeron, who's Subban? What's he going to do? Kadri, of course. So there are guys available. Are they going to go down to the wire or be busy on the long weekend hammering out a contract? So not done yet, but that's one big name, John Klingberg, who we were talking about all week when he fired his agent, went to the big agency, and scored himself a 1-year deal. So
yeah, no doubt about it. And I guess the other thing, I mean, what does this mean for Kadri? Because I mean, we really were looking for the two biggest free agents remaining. The top forward, Nazem Kadri, who was looking for a significant term and significant money. And I'd say Klingberg was in the exact same spot. Now, Klingberg was rumored to go to Carolina, and that seemed to sort of dry up when they made the trade for Brent Burns. And as I think I mentioned this yesterday, I was listening to a little bit of John Shannon, who jumped on Sekeres and Price, and what he was reporting is that John Klingberg and his agent went to the Dallas Stars with a number and term that was so high that the Dallas Stars didn't spend very much time even considering it and walked away. Now, I don't know whether they came back or reconnected. Obviously, they didn't get anything done because John Klingberg is taking just a 1-year deal. And for Nazem Kadri, it would be fascinating to know what his realistic options are right now. I mean, it has been reported, and I've sort of thrown this out, I would believe that the Avalanche would love to have him back and might be considering moving a piece. We've mentioned Sam Girard as a possibility with the emergence of Bowen Byram and the re-signing of Josh Manson. But I'm not sure that Nazem Kadri might end up being forced into a similar situation, not getting anywhere close to the term that he was hoping to get. But get into a situation, unlike Klingberg going to Anaheim, where he might be able to really shine again, hopefully have a chance to win again, and then revisit this next year. But, I mean, with every year you put on the odometer, I think the possibility of getting that big long-term deal diminishes a little bit. So, really, this was supposed to be the year for Nazem Kadri, and it just hasn't happened yet.
He had a career year. 31 years old. You'd think that he would be able to cash in. I wonder if teams are getting smarter about outlier seasons and, paying for, post. It's the way that's set up, Huss. You really have your best years as an RFA. And then by the time you get to UFA, you're on the back end of your career. You're already 27. So, it kind of screws the players here. And so he's trying to cash in. He had a career. He should be, you'd think he should be able to get a contract. It's a no-brainer. Doesn't have one. I've seen speculation. Does he actually have a deal signed with the Islanders? that hasn't been announced yet.
Ah!
And they're waiting until like he shows up at training camp, or does he have a handshake deal with Colorado for them to free up? Or what about Calgary? What about signing a 1-year deal with Calgary, and Calgary's going to go for it again? I mean, imagine if they replaced Gaudreau, Tkachuk with Kadri and Huberdeau. Now they're all going to be UFAs, but I mean, if he did sign a 1-year deal, but I don't know where he's going to go. You'd think this guy should be able to get a contract, no problem, at least a 5-year deal.
Yeah, if he signs a 1-year deal, it's a massive L for Kadri and his agent. Yes. Coming off the season, going into this year, being a center that does everything that he does with the career that he's had. I mean, he's scored 32 a couple times before. Very good defensive player. I mean, 200-foot player. So I'll say this. This is the market sort of showing itself right now. And we knew that there would be a real tough time for some of the, more veteran players in the league and guys that maybe weren't able to command big salaries. I didn't expect this happening with Nazem Kadri, so that'll certainly be something we'll discuss with Murat as well a little bit later on. We're going to start off with the Bombers, though. Big Bomber game tomorrow, 6 p.m. in Calgary. Of course, when we talk Bombers on the program, we do it for our great friends at Princess Auto. And Princess Auto welcomes all Bomber fans to the big pregame tailgate party before every Bomber game just outside IG Field. $5 beers, $3.50 pop and hot dogs, DJ Finesse spinning. A great spot before the game. I know we got to wait through a couple more road games before we get back, but then plenty of home action. So if you are a Bomber fan, you're heading out to the game, make sure to get there early to the Princess Auto tailgate. And of course, Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the project on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Many of you will be heading out to the lake this weekend. If you're out on the water and a boathouse door catches your eye, chances are it's from our friends at Wallace & Wallace. I mean, they're the leaders in fencing and overhead doors, but they've also do incredible business when it comes to your little piece of paradise on the lake. They've got it all. You can choose between steel or aluminum, polycarbonate or glass panels, and a design that is perfect. And with galvanized tracks and springs to protect against rust, the doors are built to stand up against the challenges of life at the lake. If you need service on a boathouse or boathouse door as well, give them a call at 452-2700. Check out more online at wallacedoors.com or check out their showroom over on Lawson Road. Great weekend shaping up for barbecuing, and our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market have you covered with great prices on Winnipeg's best selection of natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. Great options for the grill, including lean bison steaks or chicken, hot dogs, burgers, and if you're entertaining, non-alcoholic drink options like Sober Carpenter beer and Clever mocktails, everything you need for a perfect summer day. And hey, if you can't make it down to one of the stores, visit their new fully shoppable website to buy online, schedule a delivery, or in-store pickup at myvita.ca. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And hey, it's beach day, probably beach weekend coming up. Probably people won't be dressing up too much, although there probably will be a few weddings. But as you look into the fall, guys, make sure your wardrobe is ready for the turn of the seasons. And that means gatherings again, meetings, some galas. Every guy needs at least one suit that fits and looks great. And F Apparel's custom suits begin at just $400. Got fitted out a couple weeks ago. Really looking forward to it coming in. So many options for you when you get down there. And guys, a great deal right now on shirts. 3 custom shirts for just $210. Pop down and see Andrew and the gang for yourself at 190 Smith Street, or check them out online at fepapparel.com. All right. Darren Dunn coming up. Murat, Tash, a little NFL news and notes with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. But let's start it off with the undefeated 7-0 Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The back-to-back Grey Cup champs are on the way to Calgary this afternoon. Let's get ready for the big one tomorrow night with Ed Tait from BlueBombers.com. Ed, what's going on, man? Great to have you back on the program.
Appreciate you having me on. It's going to be a crazy day. We get to Calgary this afternoon, do some media, and then get ready for tomorrow's big showdown, as you said. It's going to be a blast.
Well, I mean, this is not the first conversation we've had over the past month about the Bombers playing a top team in the league with a massive matchup. But I have to say, it is weird looking at the schedule right now and realizing the Bombers have the opportunity to go to 8-0, where the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders are both 4-1 on the season with losses to Winnipeg. I mean, I guess this will help the team a little later on, but this team continually gets tested. And man, they passed them all so far, but this is a big, big challenge on Saturday night.
It really is weird. You mentioned the schedule, Huss, because, Calgary hasn't played since they were here in Winnipeg on July 15th, which for me seems like forever ago already. July's flying by here. The schedule has been goofy. The Bombers are in a stretch right now where they'll play 6 games in 32 days. That includes next Thursday's game in Montreal. So not only are you playing in Calgary on a Saturday, you fly back, get basically home in the middle of the morning on Sunday. Monday's a day off. You'll practice Tuesday, then you're on the plane again to Montreal. So it's a crazy chunk of the schedule here. And you're right, the Bombers will get the benefit down the road because they'll have 3 buys from week 11 on to the end of the season. So that's going to help. But when you're in the moment right now, it's just nuts. It's they're getting 1 practice a week, one full practice a week sometimes, and one game blurs into the next. But that doesn't make it any less compelling tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. And Calgary's coming off a bye. They had their issues with some COVID stuff this week, but the game a couple weeks ago was really good. And if this one can match that, we're in for a dandy.
The funny thing about it, and it's just part of the identity of this team, that many other head coaches would be talking about how tough the schedule is and, the adversity that they're going through right now. And that barely even is on the radar, it seems, of Mike O'Shea. I mean, he acknowledges the challenge. And I think when we're talking to players like Patty Neufeld, who joined us earlier, he knows that O'Shea's got a great pulse of the team, knows what the challenge is, but you won't hear them making any excuses in advance. I mean, this is a team that, regardless of who's in the lineup, expects to win. And they've done a pretty damn good job of doing that consistently so far this year.
You're right, Huss. It's funny because this is part of the mantra. People get tired of hearing about, Mike O'Shea and everybody talking about next man up, or it's the next game is the biggest game because it's the next game, and all those kind of cliche things. That's part of what they do here. I can remember Dave Ritchie. God love Dave Ritchie. He's going into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame this year, but he would have been all over this schedule right now. It would have been, Dave was the master of it's us versus them, and them is trying to screw us. And, he would just be loving every second of this, right? He used it as fuel. He used it to kind of fire his guys up, whereas O'Shea is the opposite, and that don't even think about it. It's a sign of mental weakness if you use this as a crutch. And we even asked Jake Thomas about this yesterday, and he said, he looks forward to it because he gets a better sleep. He's away from his wife's to-do list and doesn't have somebody bugger him, right? So it's just, if you take that approach all the time, nothing will seem insurmountable. And one of the things that Coach O'Shea talks about all the time is whatever it is. I mentioned this to you before, Huss. If it's raining, it's perfect. If it's snowing, it's perfect. If they're playing 6 games in 32 games, it's perfect. That's what Coach O'Shea says all the time. And the players have bought in, and I think that's part of why they're 7-0.
Well, I'll tell you what, it doesn't get much more perfect than having 2 of the top teams going at it on a Saturday night of a long weekend. And, for Calgary, who had some off-field issues with pneumonia and I believe some COVID a little bit, but certainly they've got the advantage in rest. But the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have all the momentum right now in the Canadian Football League. That being said, though, this is a big, big test. You know that Calgary will be feeling like they maybe let one get away from them here in Winnipeg a couple weeks ago. And, of course, with all the football the team has played, the minute that depth chart comes out the day before the game is the key moment to see who's in and who's out. And I know Blue Bomber fans were hoping we might see one or both of Greg Ellingson or Jackson Jeffcoat return. That won't happen. But it is nice to see Nick Dembski. Before we get to some of the guys that are out, I mean, a big addition. And the Bombers, offense has done it in a number of different ways. No more bizarre than the Edmonton game last week. Big addition back into the lineup with a productive player like Nick.
Absolutely. He brings so many different wrinkles to the offense. We know he's a dynamite receiver, but there's those wrinkles, and they've exploited them against Calgary a few times too, where he runs the ball, and he's just a gifted athlete, right? And I think last week in Edmonton, the Elks did a really good job of kind of taking some things away from Zach Collaros. He didn't have Greg Ellingson. Carlton Agadosi, who had 2 touchdowns against Calgary, got hurt in that game. You're right, and no Nick Dembski, so that's a big factor too. Getting him back is massive. It's again, 7-0 is pretty impressive when you look at what's happened on this receiving core with Ellingson out, with Dembski out. Agadosi comes in, pops off the page, and then he's only goes for about a half of the next game. It's kind of been a revolving door outside of Rashid Bailey, Dalton Schoen, and Drew Wolodarski. So I think they're ecstatic to have Nick back because he's just a playmaker, right?
He certainly is. And speaking of playmakers, I mean, we got to talk about Dalton Schoen for a minute. We always joke about the WST bump. We've had some guys come on the show and had good games. But Ed, for the first time maybe ever, we were doing our Coolbet lines, and knowing that Ellingson was out, the big conversation was, okay, who's going to be the guy to step up? And I think half the chat must have been on the over for Dalton Schoen yards and a touchdown, and he did it in one freaking play. He has been a revelation so far this year. And by the way, folks, if you have had a chance to watch CFL Wired this week on TSN, there's a ton of great stuff from Dalton Schoen. But at this point in the season, he has to be one of the best stories so far, maybe not just here in Winnipeg, but in the league, Ed.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's a front runner for Rookie of the Year. He's been so impressive. You talked about that play last week. That's what he does. He's got such a high football IQ already. That was a broken play, basically, right? But he found a place to get open, and Zach Collaros found him, and then he made Duron Carter look like a fool trying to tackle him in the open field. Darren Cameron and I recorded a podcast with him yesterday, Huss, and he's every bit as genuine as you think. This is a guy, we've talked about his story, a walk-on at Kansas State. His dad told him to have a street dog mentality. He writes that on his wrist tape before every game, street dog. And he's just, I tell you what, it's been 7 games, and this guy's already become a fan favorite because of not only just what he does on the field, but he just says and does all the right things. He's really likable, and he had some. I'm doing a little plug here for our own podcast, but he had some really cool things to talk about in his days at K-State and playing for Bill Snyder, and just everything that's happened to him since he got to Winnipeg. It's a cool story, right? Of all the things that can happen in the start of a season, and for them Bombers to be 7-0, I don't know that very many people thought that Dalton Schoen would have his fingerprints all over this great start like he does.
No, he certainly has been, and certainly is making some fantasy players pretty happy as well through 7 wins on the season. Hey, before we get to the defensive side of the football and who's in and out, I kind of laugh. We were just talking about O'Shea. Everything's perfect. Is Zach Collaros the quarterback version of Mike O'Shea a little bit as far as his mentality? I mean, it's a guy that never seems to get too high, never seems to get too low. And the bottom line is he brings a professionalism and a consistency every single game to find ways to win, sometimes in bizarre circumstances like last week, only connecting for 7 completions. But overall, has he sort of become Mike O'Shea of the offense?
That's a great analogy, Huss. I hadn't thought of that, but it's probably very true. And it's maybe why when they were contemplating the trade in October of 2019, that when the idea came up to Coach O'Shea, he had worked with him before, and probably because their personalities mesh or they're very similar, that might be why they made the trade. And then I think that's a big part of why it works so much here. The guy has this, you talk to the players, he walks into the huddle and he's just, he's calm, cool, and collected. When I was in the 80s, I was a huge fan of Joe Montana. And there's some similarities there, in my opinion, in just the way they command a huddle and the way they act on the field. And that's as high as praise as I can give a quarterback because Joe Montana is my favorite. But there's just something about him, right? He's got that it factor that so many coaches talk about. He doesn't get high, doesn't get low, like you said. After the game last week, you're right. He had 7 completions. They win the game, and he's doing the media. The quarterback has to always do media after a game, and you can tell he's ticked off. But he did his 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever it was, because the answers were short. He was mad. He was mad at what they had done, even in a victory. But that's about as much emotion as you will see from him after a game. It's just he's Joe Cool, as they say.
No doubt about it. Ed Tait of BlueBombers.com getting us ready for the big tilt tomorrow in the Canadian Football League. Bombers and Stamps from McMahon Stadium in Calgary. Local start time here in Winnipeg at 6 p.m. Eddie, we've been talking about the offense. Let's head over to the defensive side of the football. Not getting any help on the line. No return of Jackson Jeffcoat. And another hit in the defensive secondary. How's the defense looking overall health-wise going into Saturday night?
Yeah, it's kind of you win some, lose some when you look at the depth chart. We talked about Dembski coming back. No Jackson Jeffcoat, as you mentioned, and there's going to be another change at safety with Malcolm Thompson got nicked up. He's been replacing Brandon Alexander. And so Nick Howlett, the Canadian who's been so unbelievable on special teams, will start at safety. It's a big change because Malcolm Thompson's been pretty good back there, more than pretty good, I think. He's sort of the same kind of physical force back there that Brandon Alexander is. Doesn't have the experience that BA does in terms of communication, but he's been really good. And so it's unfortunate he got nicked up, and he's put on the 1-game injured list, so that hurts them. And again, without Jackson Jeffcoat on the one edge, it's going to be Cedric Wilcox the second and LB Mack the third, who had a sack last week. The Bombers keep getting stuff done from all these people that step in. And I wrote something earlier this week too, and it's their big play guys. Willie Jefferson, he's played a couple games now without Jeffcoat on the other end, so he's getting extra attention, but he's still getting after the quarterback. He had 3 knockdowns last week. He's got 3 sacks. He had that pick 6 a couple weeks ago. I make the case that you could say he's having his best year, even though the stats might not say it, because Jackson hasn't been on the other side to take some of the attention away from him too.
Well, and it was funny, of course, I know you did a piece as well, on Willie becoming the first player in Canadian Football League history to have the 50 sacks and 50 deflections. And I can't remember who we were talking to about it earlier this week, but the deflections are one of those stats that I think sort of gets overlooked. But in a way, sometimes that's the only way Dietrich Nichols is getting his hands on a football, the fact that he goes off Willie Jefferson, because no one's throwing it at him.
Yeah. It's an underrated stat, in a lot of ways, from what you just said, the tips and it gets to a defensive back. But you think of a guy that's 6'7" with that wingspan, and you're a quarterback trying to find a throwing lane. Even if he doesn't get his mitts on it, you're changing a lot of throws. And I was talking to Willie about that when we were doing this story. I wish the CFL still kept that stat about pressures. And I know it was too subjective for them. That's the reason that they dumped it. But just think of all the times that Willie impacts a play where he's not quite at the quarterback, but he's got his hands up and the guy's pulling it down because there's this giant in his face. That's a pressure. That's a stat that should still count, in my opinion, because it's affecting the play. And what I really liked when I talked to Willie, as we talked about, and thanks for, I think it was you that even tweeted or retweeted the guy from TSN that first pointed that out. Thanks for that, because that gave me a story idea for a slow day, Huss.
My anyway, pleasure, Eddie.
When we were talking, when I was talking to Willie about that the other day, the first thing out of his mouth is it's a long way from 100. So he wants to be in the 100 club. And I love that, because he said he's not done. And, you think of where he's at in his career, he's still dominant, still making a difference on defense, and he still has a lot more to do, in his words.
Well, and Willie's going to get a ton of attention, probably even more so with Jackson Jeffcoat out. But you think about, I think this is a big, big test, as it always is, but especially with the running game of Calgary for the likes of Sales, Thomas, and of course, LB Mack, who got into the lineup for the first time last year in Jackson Jeffcoat's absence.
Yeah, I was looking at some numbers here today, Huss. In the first game against Calgary a couple weeks ago, Kadeem Carey, Calgary's running back, had he had 12 carries for 110 yards. That's incredible. I'm mathematically challenged, but that's pretty damn good. And then the Bombers only had, I think, 45 yards on 21 carries. So there's just a dramatic difference in the two running games in the first game. And this is a conversation we've been having all year about the Bombers and how they can get their ground game going. I thought that Brady Oliveira had some hard yards last week in Edmonton, but then the next day or a couple of days later, Andrew Harris does his thing for Toronto, and that's what everybody's comparing what the Bombers are doing this year to a guy that's destined for the Hall of Fame. And I think it's still going to come. Calgary's tough. It might not come this week, but I think that Buck Pierce has found some different ways to get guys the ball. It might not all be Brady and Johnny Augustine. It might be some Nick Dembski. It might be some Greg McCrae, because Buck is committed to keeping the ground game part of what they do offensively.
Well, and I mean, I just keep going back to that BC game where, it was coming off the Toronto game where they didn't run the ball particularly effectively, and they established the run. They rushed for more yards in that first quarter than they had the entire previous game. And at that point, the BC defense had to respect the run, and Zach Collaros was a surgeon for the remainder of the three quarters, and the Bombers ran away with it. Going to be a great matchup on Saturday. Certainly is the marquee game of the weekend in the Canadian Football League. But hey, Ed, before we go, what are your thoughts about this one tonight between BC and Saskatchewan? Another big game in the West. Saskatchewan's been reeling a little bit with the back-to-back losses to Toronto, and BC's been waiting a while to get back on the field.
Yeah, it should be a great one too. We're going to start getting some answers over the next few weeks in this league, right? I thought the game last night in Hamilton between Montreal and Hamilton was every bit as entertaining as any game we've seen this year. It was kind of goofy in some circumstances, but it was still fun. And the East has been kind of a disaster outside of Toronto, but they're going to start playing each other now. So somebody's going to win some games. They have to. And then out west here, we're going to start to get some answers because Saskatchewan's had a East-heavy schedule to start. They haven't played BC, Winnipeg, or Calgary yet. BC hasn't been on the road very much yet this season, so that's going to be interesting. And as you said off the top here, both BC and Calgary have had 2 byes already. So, you look at the standings, and like you said, it's bizarre to see one team at 7 and games played and a couple others at 5, and there hasn't been a lot of divisional games yet. So kind of buckle up, do up your chin strap, because between now and through Labor Day, it's going to be pretty heavy between the division games. And I love it. It's late summer. Let's go.
Well, another short week next week heading into a Thursday game in Montreal, but the focus is all on Saturday night. And, the Bombers will never be looking ahead past an opponent, especially one as good as Calgary. Hey, Ed, just on the way out, I wanted to mention, I don't think we could have a better way to kick things off for the long weekend. I'm going to head down and watch the Valor lads take on Pacific FC at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Maybe have a couple, get something to eat, and then, of course, watch the game. Pretty nice run for Valor over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks. They had those 3 straight wins, another draw, have had a loss, but things seem to be coming around for Phil and the boys.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had the 4-game unbeaten streak was a franchise record, and you're right, it came to an end in Hamilton last week, and they had that stupid Wednesday, Saturday, I think it was, where the game got rescheduled because of COVID, and they had some guys were flying and didn't get to Ottawa till 4:30 in the morning, and they got a tie. Anyway, it's been a kind of a crazy schedule for them. They have 7 of their next 8 at home, which is massive for them. They've got they're still in 5th place trying to track down one of those 4 playoff spots. Be a new forward in the lineup Saturday against Pacific, Billy Forbes, who's on loan from Detroit FC. I talked to him yesterday. He's on the Turks and Caicos national team. He had a hat trick in one of their games recently. So he's going to bring some speed. And then Pacific was playing in Jamaica on Tuesday night. So they're on a short week. They're in the CONCACAF League as the defending CPL champion. So it should be fun. And again, start of a real critical home stretch for Valor here with a bunch of games at home between now and Labor Day.
Well, if you're looking for something to do on Saturday afternoon before the Bombers and Stamps get going at 6, Valor FC and Pacific kick off at 2 p.m. at IG Field. Eddie, travel safe this aft. Good luck tomorrow, and we'll look forward to catching up next week, hopefully before the back-to-back against the Alouettes.
Right on, Huss. Thanks for having me on. Have a good day.
All right, great stuff from Eddie. Looking forward to the game tomorrow night, 6 o'clock p.m. is kickoff. All right, we got lots to get to coming up. Murat join us in about 20 minutes or so. Before that, we're going to head out to the track in the Assiniboia Downs. And don't forget, the Manitoba Derby is Monday night. If you're not able to get out on any nights, you want to bet with us, hit hpibet.com, and you can bet on tracks around the world, including everything we've got going on over at Assiniboia Downs. Hey, it's going to be hot this weekend. Got to stay hydrated. And when we talk water in this town, you know the experts at Culligan Water are taking care of Winnipeg and Southern Manitoba, and they've been doing it as a locally owned family business for over 65 years. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, as well as commercial and industrial water products and solutions, is what Culligan's all about. Visit them at 1200 Sargent Avenue, 694-5180, and check out all their products and services and how they can help you and your family online at drinkculligan.com. Got your batteries for the camper, for the boat, for all your plans for the weekend? Well, if you haven't, what you need to do right now is give Donnie and the gang a call over at Manitoba Battery, 783-8787. 1026 Logan Avenue. Manitoba Battery is where you'll save time and, most importantly, money on the best prices in town while shopping local on batteries for literally everything. They're also the home of the Deep Cycle 24 battery for $99.50, a price nobody in town can touch. And hey, the other great thing that they'll do, speaking of saving you time, is deliver it anywhere citywide at no additional fee. Forget the big box stores when it comes to batteries. Shop local, get a better price, and enjoy the convenience and service that Manitoba Battery has to offer. They're ready for you now, 8 until 6, Monday to Friday. Learn more online at manitobabattery.com or pop down and visit them at 1026 Logan Avenue. And hey, Royal Sports also ready for the weekend. We always talk about the incredible merch they've got. I mean, cool hats and jerseys, t-shirts, everything you want for your favorite team. But this is the time where you want to be getting outside. And you've got an amazing selection of bikes, soccer, softball, baseball. And I know a lot of people continue to get into disc golf. And once you try it, you can get hooked. They've got an amazing selection of disc golf equipment, tennis, and more. So before you maybe head out of town this weekend, pop by Royal Sports, pick up maybe some disc golf equipment or whatever you plan to dominate the weekend with. Royal Sports has it for you. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Big tent sale coming up early in September, what my little birdies are telling me. And Breezy Bend, of course, big thanks to our friends at Breezy Bend. I'm looking forward to getting out there on Monday before the Derby. We're going to talk about that with Darren Dunn right away. But some big news for Canada. And, of course, our team Coolbet guy, Taylor Pendrith, leading the Rocket Mortgage Open. He was tied with Tony Finau after yesterday's round, tied for the lead at 8 under. He has started off his second round birdieing 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Taylor Pendrith is now the solo leader with a 2-shot lead right now over Cameron Young and Lee Hodges. Tony Finau, Scott Sahith Theegala, all at 9 under par. We'll pay attention to that throughout the afternoon as well. And hey, if you're looking for a great home for you and your family on the golf course at one of Winnipeg's best private courses, check out Breezy Bend. Talk to our friend Corey Johnson about getting on the waiting list for next year, or find out everything Breezy has waiting for you online at breezybend.ca. All right, before Murat joins us, let's head out to Assiniboia Downs and welcome in Darren Dunn to get ready for the Manitoba Derby this weekend. Dunn, Double D, how are you?
2 thumbs up. Happy to be with you, man.
Hey, I know you've been dealing with a lot lately, and I want to focus on the Derby, but, we've talked about this strange race last week on the show. There's been lots of talk in horse racing circles about it. Mike McIntyre's got a big piece in the Winnipeg Free Press today, and I just figured I'd quickly ask you about it because I knew it was pretty clear that you were somewhat frustrated about how this was handled by the regulator and maybe some of the optics to people that enjoy putting a toonie down on racing at the track.
Yeah, fair game for sure, Hustler. And really, yeah, it's gone kind of viral, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I've had feedback from, and I'm not exaggerating here, as far away as Asia, the Middle East, Australia, certainly all over Canada, North America for that matter. It was last Wednesday, July the 20th, race 5, and it related to number 1, a horse named King Wit, and the jockey Sheldon Chickeness. So in the end, the horse was out by 5 or 6 lengths at the time, turning for home, was absolute. There we go. The horse was going to win. There you see the one horse there, and put on my former track announcer Mike hat here, out by about 5 there, well in control, giving you a little live play-by-play here. And it's just what you're about to see when the horse turns for home with this incredible lead, no pressure, not fading in any way, shape, or form, on its way to a highly probable victory. In fact, I would say could potentially have widened his advantage turning for home. So into the far turn they go. Everything seems to be in order. Nothing to see here. That's our South Tower panning out to get the whole field in. Gives you an idea of why they had to do that, because the horse was out by so many. And then all of a sudden, when I watch this live, the jockey starts to act up in the saddle, restrain the horse, pull it back. And I thought the horse was injured and was pulling up, and then the rest of the field catches up. And then the race is on again. And away he goes. He uses his crop, and the horse finishes, very aggressively and is ridden very aggressively to ultimately lose the race by about a long neck. So that didn't look good to me. I didn't care for what I saw there. I was immediately caught off guard by the fact that there was no stewards inquiry. And those who don't know, stewards are our version of the sports referees. I think they should have taken a look at that at a minimum, or sent a message that they saw what we all saw, which was a highly unusual ride by a jockey in the saddle, and that, in fact, the horse seemed to be compromised by that jockey and costing him a win. In saying that, he didn't interfere with any other horses, so a steward's inquiry wouldn't have changed the finish that night, and it wouldn't have changed the payout. In saying that, though, the fact that there was no inquiry and I was left with, my jaw on the ground about how that went down, I wanted it looked into. I wanted it taken very seriously, and I made a formal request to our regulator to have that reviewed from top to bottom. They did that, to my understanding, making multiple interviews to the people connected with the horse, trainer, jockey, et cetera, reviewed film, et cetera, and then only to a couple of days ago come out with their ruling and review to indicate, for all intents and purposes, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that no rules were broken, no discipline involved. And that set me off, in the most professional way I can. I value my regulator. They're great people. Don't get me wrong. And they're doing their job to the best of their ability, but I could not disagree with their decision any stronger. I believe that they made a mistake on this one. I think it's a miss. I guess we ultimately agreed to disagree on this, but in my mind, and I spoke to the jockey, by the way, a few days afterwards to ask him what was going on there. I know him a little bit. Do I think he's honest? Absolutely. Do I think he bet on the race? I do not. Do I think he cheated? I don't. Do I think he tried to fix the race? I'm convinced he didn't. And I'm not just trying to protect my brand here or anything. I'm telling you my honest opinion. I've been transparent from the word go on the situation. Nothing to hide. Running on a show out there. We fly straight. But in saying that, ultimately, he had indicated to me that the horse in the morning when they exercise, these horses are exercised 7 days a week, the horse doesn't handle that turn for home. His momentum carries him out, a term we use, bolting. He was worried the horse was going to do that. He thought he might potentially impact the rest of the field. He was worried about cutting off somebody else or injuring somebody else. And I'm going to have all kinds of respect for any jockey who's going to have their fellow riders and other horses in at the forefront of their consideration out there, because nobody wants an accident. Nobody wants to be hurt. But I believe he just got in his own head too much, didn't fully understand or appreciate the situation of that he was out by 5 or 6 lengths. And even if the horse had drifted out, in my opinion, so what? He still had so much momentum. He would have went on to win. I think he would have actually increased his lead and won by 10 or 15 lengths perhaps. To pull the horse back or restrain it, in my opinion, what I saw with my eyes, to almost a stop, and then to, from almost a standing start to restart the horse's momentum, while the rest of the field had full uninterrupted momentum, and then to come on so strong to almost win again anyways, tells me if you hadn't have interrupted that momentum, even if the horse had went really wide in the stretch, and we have one of the biggest tracks in Canada, so what? The horse would have went wide, but would have won by many, in my opinion. So my key issue is, I believe he affected the outcome of that race. I believe he caused his horse unintentionally And not everybody's going to agree with that because everybody's going to think that there's something more nefarious there. But I truly believe he was erring on the side of safety. I think he overcompensated. I think he overreacted. I think he overthought the situation and didn't need to, especially when you're out front by that many. And ultimately, I think the horse would have won. And I think he should have been penalized for that because I don't believe the public was given a fair shake in that race by the jockey, even the one intentionally. And I think the regulator, in my opinion, should have fined and suspended him quite substantially, quite heavily. I don't want to say exactly what he should have got, but some version of significant penalty should have come his way because at the core of anything in a race, I'm all for safety, believe me, but you can't affect the outcome of a race so meaningfully and what is ultimately technically intentionally. And, even though God bless you're erring on the side of safety. And I just felt the public deserved a better outcome from that, even though they wouldn't have cashed their tickets. But maybe there would have been a little bit of satisfaction if the jockey had been penalized for his actions. And I think the regulator got it wrong. And obviously they don't agree with me. And I can't change their decision.
Well, I certainly appreciate you addressing that, Darren. And again, Mike McIntyre did a big piece today on it in the Winnipeg Free Press, and people can check that out if they wish. And at a certain point, it is out of your hands. I mean, you guys have done everything you can. And hopefully, I don't think there'll be much incompetence on Monday night because it's the best of the best, the biggest race of the year. What is it? The 77th running of the Manitoba
74. 74
running of the Derby. Of course, things get going at 7:30 p.m. and it will be race 6. Darren, you gathered the media together yesterday to roll it out. Fill us in on this 8-horse field for the biggest prize in Manitoba horse racing every year.
Yeah, so a lot of history, as you mentioned. I mean, it goes all the way back to 1930 when the first edition was run at Polo Park Racetrack. As in, for those that don't realize, Polo Park Shopping Mall actually used to be a huge racetrack in Winnipeg. At that time on the far western outskirts of Winnipeg. And, even though it's a shopping mall now, they retained the name Polo Park. That came from the fact that it used to be a racetrack named Polo Park Racetrack. 74 versions of it. I got to tell you, first and foremost, I am thrilled to have 8 horses go to post. There's no guarantee, Hustler, in, the field size you get. I do know this. I understand racing metrics very well, and I hyperanalyze every aspect of my operation. Plain and simple, the bigger the fields, the more wagering there is. So I've seen $500,000 races, $1 million races that have 4 and 5 horse fields. So to put up 100,000, which is a lot for us, but not an enormous amount in the spectrum of the whole industry, and certainly across Canada and the United States and North America. So to get 8 is wonderful. And what a field it is. I'll say this in just a quick review of it. Pray for Peace, heavy morning line favorite at 7-5. So $2 to win will get you about $4.40 if the horse wins. Won the prep for this, the Manitoba Derby trial, and won it for fun with ease. A couple of horses in that race were compromised, and they're looking for revenge here. So I'm glad that they've come back to say, let me take another crack at them. They were hammered out of the gate. It's unfortunate sometimes. They're horses. They're not machines. Jockeys aren't perfect in the saddle, and we just talked about an example of that. But out of the gate, a couple of horses for trainer Robertino Diodoro got significantly compromised. Great Escape and Clancy's Pistol, and they just got slammed out of the gate, and they lost all chance in the Derby trial. So I'll say this, though. Pray for Peace won easy, had a lot left. A horse they purchased for $80,000 US out of Churchill Downs. So the owner out of Texas, Henry Witt Jr., stepped up, and he's been the leading owner at Assiniboia Downs for 5 years in a row. His trainer is our top trainer, Jerry Gorno, who's going for his 3rd straight trainer title. But it's the one thing on their bucket list they don't have. They don't have a Manitoba Derby together, and this is easily their best shot. But it's a horse race and anybody can win. Even Robertino Diodoro, the trainer of 3, he's putting 3 in the race. He's won this race 3 times, 3 for that matter, 3 of the last 5 years. And he knows what it takes to win. So Great Escape and Clancy's Pistol came early, tested the Derby trial. Again, as I mentioned, got compromised. You'll see more out of them. And then some local connections went through Diodoro to buy a horse out of Churchill Downs for $50,000 US just at the beginning of July named Red Knobs. And this horse is a monster. There's a local horse by the name of Strong Belief, won 2 in a row, bred probably the best in the field to run this distance of ground. It's the longest distance we run in the entire year in our season. So he's going to love the distance of this race. He's up against the stiffest competition he's ever had. But if you want to do that whole holistic thing, Strong Belief is actually partially owned by the estate of Harvey Warner, my chair that I lost unexpectedly in March. The fact that on a day, and here's the whole, effect around it, that you could kind of look beyond what you see on paper. The name of the horse is Strong Belief. It's owned partially by the state of Harvey, and it's on a day when we're recognizing him with the first ever Harvey Warner Stakes. So you want to go down that road of, from above, you could certainly back that and have a spiritual shot at winning the Derby. And this horse will be a long shot, but we'll be flying late down the lane. So a lot to choose. I don't mean to ramble on about it, Hustler, but it's wide open. It's interesting. It should be a good one. I'm thrilled to have so many going to gate. And again, for me, just get them around there safely. I don't bet on them. I don't own them. I don't breed them. But I care about everybody involved. And I want the fans to have a tremendous experience on a day that, most circle as the one and maybe only time they'll come out during the season.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting out there, and I know many of our viewers and listeners will be as well. We've got a little afternoon tea time with the fellas down at Breezy, and then we'll make our way down, and it'll all get ready for race 6, the 74th running of the Manitoba Derby. And tell you what, making our picks with Remis every day on the show, Darren, I've got a much better eye on all of these horses. So got a couple days to make the selections and get at it. Hey, just quickly for people that maybe haven't been out to the track, they've heard us talk about it, they maybe have checked it out on YouTube. Just very quickly, what do people need to know if they are going to make their maiden voyage out to the track for the Derby on Monday night?
Well, first of all, in this time of inflationary extreme, free parking, free admission. So walk right in. It's going to be a beautiful day by all accounts, 25 degrees. There's so many places to watch the race. Our terrace dining room buffet is sold out, but our clubhouse is air conditioned. You can head up there. Lots of places to watch the race. You can go up to our open air grandstand, which I would argue has the best view of the entire racetrack and an incredible view of the city of Winnipeg. Or grab a picnic table or a program and grab a bench and watch the race there. I encourage people to take the time to watch the horses be saddled over at the paddock on the north part of our property. It's fun to be able to watch them and get a feel for the horses really up close. And from that standpoint, whether you handicap, and if you don't understand what that means, how to basically pick one horse over the other by reading all of the information of the race program. We have a fan education center with a couple of great ambassadors who will walk you through the program, explain everything, tell you where to go around the building to have the best experience. So again, pick a name, pick a color, bet your house numbers, handicap the race by reading the information. There's so many ways to go at it. But you can enjoy the day in a robust way in a lot of ways, and so many places to watch the race are out there and have a little fun. We have family fun returning that night if you bring in the kids, bouncy castles, and et cetera, et cetera. Sweepstakes, enter your name. We're going to draw some people. Well, 8 horses, 8 people are going to be drawn. We're going to put a $100 win ticket on the horse we draw you to. So if you're a $2 bettor, you might have a Willy Wonka golden ticket experience, waving a $100 win bet on a horse around, and that horse wins. You cash the ticket and keep the money. So things like that. A couple other great stakes races there as well. Should be a full day. And again, it fits people with lake life as well. So head to the lake, enjoy the long weekend, but then do the downs when you're planning to come home from the lake. And Monday night we'll do it up big time.
The main event of the long weekend is Monday night, race 6, Manitoba Derby, and a Derby day at the track. Darren, we'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much for the time, and have a great weekend.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks. Appreciate the chance to chat.
All right, great stuff from Darren Dunn. Looking forward to the Derby on Monday night. And yes, I saw you, BA, mention it. If you could have only seen the look on my face watching that infamous race last week with King Wit. Should be great. Anyways, listen, long weekend is here. You know what goes great with the long weekend? Some great Little Brown Jug beers. And they got an awesome deal for you heading into the long weekend. Buy 2 Good Times variety packs and get a $15 gift card. So essentially, you pop down to the, this is at the brewery and tap room on William Avenue. If you go in there, get a couple Good Times variety packs for the weekend, and you get a $15 gift card that you can use online at littlebrownjug.ca or in the tap room. This offer goes until July 31st at midnight. No coupon code necessary. So pop down, and maybe you can probably check it out online as well. But the best spot to do it is, and you can try all their great beers as well, down at Little Brown Jug on William Avenue. The Knot Gang's ready for the weekend. Our friends at Knot AutoCorp, obviously big sponsors of the Bombers, and I know Trevor's fired up for the game, but their main game is getting Manitobans into amazing vehicles at the best possible price. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great deal with the help of the Knot team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray and check out all the great vehicles on the lot, or if there's one in particular, a make and model you're looking, let them know, and they'll get it to Winnipeg for you at the best possible price. You can also check them out online 24/7 at knot.ca. Gonna be hot tomorrow. I'm gonna get out to the soccer game, I think, after doing the baseball tonight. Before or after, though, I'll be hitting one of the Nick and Nicky DQs, I can tell you that. Nothing makes the long weekend taste better than a great blizzard, maybe one of those delicious stack burgers. And hey, if you're getting some people over for a barbecue on the weekend, why not step it up and get a DQ ice cream cake? God, they've got 4 locations: DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. And if you do want to get a head start on a custom cake, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba, and they'll get that ready for you to go. And of course, as we mentioned, just talked to Darren Dunn, Assiniboia Downs is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, live racing, but it's Manitoba Derby Day, Monday night. I'll be out there. Hope to see you there. All right, let's get into a little bit of hockey talk right now with our good friend Murat, who joins us a little later on in the week than he normally does. Been a minute since we heard from Pierre-Luc Dubois, but that certainly was the big story of the week. How are you, my friend? What's going on?
Hey, I'm doing well. I love hearing this Valor FC talk. I mean, maybe that's the way to spend the long weekend.
Well, I figured it's perfect. It's a 2 p.m. game. So you go out. It's going to be gorgeous, 30 and sunny tomorrow afternoon. Watch the lads try and get 3 big points against Pacific, and then maybe go grab something to eat and set up shop somewhere to watch the Bombers hopefully get to 8-0 against the Calgary Stampeders. It's some good options for us sports fans for tomorrow.
Yeah, no doubt. You're just by talking about it, you're selling me on the idea. No wonder people sponsor through you.
Well, you know what? And I mean, this is a hashtag not spawn, but I mean, I've gotten more and more into soccer over the last few years, and we haven't had the opportunity to go out and actually see it. Obviously we've watched Canada and, watched some of the big games on television, but I have just loved, and I go with people that haven't been there before. They really enjoy it. The stadium's amazing for it. You got plenty of room to stretch out or enjoy with your group. And obviously the fans in the trench really make for a great atmosphere as well. So I do tell folks that they haven't tried it yet, get out and check out a Valor FC game, and I think people will really enjoy it. They've got a lot of home games coming up. Actually, speaking of which, we'll have some more tickets for games on Wednesday and Sunday next week that will be given away on the program. Murat, I do want to get to the big news of the day with John Klingberg signing. But let's go back to Monday. I mean, you and the team at The Athletic had spent quite a bit of time writing on the Dubois situation. We knew that there was going to be an attempt at sort of quieting the angst amongst Jet fans. How do you think PLD did, and what did you take away from his media availability on Monday?
Yeah, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois was in damage control mode and did a really good job of it, to be honest. I think that by saying that he didn't request a trade, he did the best that he could do on that front. And he refuted the report that he was at the draft specifically with intention, or not with intentions, but with hopes or anticipation of being traded that night as well. So that was an interesting one, because with that report, you would have seen Martin Leclerc, whose report that he had went to the draft anticipating to be traded, had gone around the horn. We took that at The Athletic with our various sources to a handful of people with knowledge of the situation. And, eventually we were told that that was in fact the case, that it was 100% true, that Montreal was interested, that he was at the draft, he was at the draft even thinking that he would be traded. Now, that's an interesting one, because nobody except for Pierre-Luc Dubois is in his mind, is in his head. So what he wants or what he thinks is his to say and no one else's. But I certainly thought that there was some truth to that. To hear him say that it's false, that's his prerogative and his authority. I mean, he said that he attended because his bank sponsored a box. He lives 10 to 15 minutes away from the arena. It was an easy thing for him. And so I think that becomes the objective truth of the matter because Pierre-Luc Dubois has said so. At the same time, so my big takeaway was that was the one thing he refuted from the day. He didn't refute that he might like to play in Montreal someday. He didn't say that he'd like to stay in Winnipeg for several years. He didn't say he's not planning on testing the unrestricted free agency market. So that detail may be false. I think that the overall story, the trend, this idea that, okay, well, by taking the one-year qualifying offer, by being in a position next summer to take an arbitration deal that walks him straight to unrestricted free agency, he's still a sticky wicket for the Winnipeg Jets moving forward. And I think that I left that media availability as sure of that as ever.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on it. I mean, from my perspective, the one thing that I think most fans, like to hear is that he seems like he's got a very good attitude about the situation going in. And, it was quite clear that they'd made this decision before. I mean, whoever, most likely his agent, had leaked to Elliot Friedman that the plan was to, explore unrestricted free agency in 2 seasons. And a lot of what happened Monday, I think, was really to try to quell the blowback from the very public flirtation by Pat Brisson with the Montreal club. But I will say this, with him taking the qualifying offer and, expressing the excitement and optimism about going into the season, I think in the short term, that was the best thing and the most logical thing for him to say and hopefully follow through with, because the one thing I think we can all agree on, even if you are of the mind like myself that this is going to end in a trade at some point for the Winnipeg Jets dealing to Pierre-Luc Dubois to Montreal or elsewhere, it is in everyone's best interest for Pierre-Luc Dubois to come out to have a great season, both for him and his future earnings and what contract he gets when he finally signs a long-term deal. And certainly from a Jets perspective, when it comes to being competitive this season, but also increasing his value for whenever that trade is made.
100% on all fronts. I mean, you look at the incentives here. There's not going to be a repetition of the shift like in Columbus before he was traded to Winnipeg. I know that that's a fear I've seen fans express. I have no expectation of that whatsoever. Pierre-Luc Dubois' attitude was right. His ability to come back into that room and do his best. I think that we've seen in the past with players who we knew were on their way out, such as Jacob Trouba, who I think was well known he wanted out, and Andrew Kopp, I expected for a long time heading into this trade deadline that he wasn't going to re-sign either. These players can go in and have a positive impact on the team. And I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is in a great place to do that, especially if he plays alongside Kyle Connor again. The incentives are exactly as you laid out, because Winnipeg gets a better asset the better that Pierre-Luc Dubois plays. Pierre-Luc Dubois, in addition to making himself a more valuable trade asset, if you think about arbitration or you think about contract negotiations, when I talk to agents, they usually tell me that multiple repeated seasons of offensive success are what gets people paid. And if Pierre-Luc Dubois was going to hit arbitration this summer, you might look past this most recent successful season. And at his first season as a Winnipeg Jet, that was a huge disappointment. Suddenly chain 2 of those back-to-back together, in addition to all those other years before that 1-year blip. And this guy has a right to ask for quite a lot more money in arbitration or long-term or otherwise, whether he's in Winnipeg or has been traded at that point. That's in his best interest for sure.
Yeah. So, I imagine that, what happened on Monday, and I don't know how successful it was, but, to quell the immediate angst and, maybe not have to go through all of that under the bright lights of the beginning of training camp. So they're sort of getting ahead to it. When do you think, and I guess this is a difficult question to answer, but, when something will happen. We were talking with Jeff earlier this week, and he said he still wouldn't be surprised if something happened before the start of the season. I sort of think the way things are reading the tea leaves, that's less than likely. But in your opinion, if Dubois plays well this season, when is the best time for the Winnipeg Jets to move, if they have come to the conclusion that at some point they're going to have to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois?
If you want the hot take, it's next summer's draft. That's the easiest solution on that front. We saw it with Jacob Trouba a couple years back. I am like you in this. I don't expect to trade between now and the start of the season. There is this minor I kept using the word pressure point or pinch point the last time I was on your show of September at camp, when teams are sorting out their rosters, all of those sorts of things. I think that the major pressures on those, even if in Montreal they're asking their GM about it every day at camp, or even if in Winnipeg reporters are still asking about this topic, I don't think that's enough of a pressure point, especially with cap hits locked in, especially with the fact that Winnipeg doesn't owe him a trade to Montreal specifically. The pressure there is minor. The next point that you might see is the trade deadline. And the only way that Winnipeg trades him at the trade deadline is if the Jets have just collapsed, they're a world away from playoff contention, and there are contenders offering major chips for Pierre-Luc Dubois as a 2-year playoff rental. You saw what Cheveldayoff was able to do with Andrew Kopp as a 1-year playoff rental. We've seen Blake Coleman and others in the years past. We've seen various defensemen get traded. I think McDonough was a 2-year rental as well. You can get quite a lot for these players, especially if they're having a big year at the time. I think the Jets' goal is to be at least within striking distance of a playoff spot at that point. I mean, they're trying to sell fans, I think, on the optimism of walking it back and making the playoffs this year. So then the next obvious one is next offseason, because I sincerely believe that based on not the words, but the actions so far in terms of contracts signed and not, I expect Pierre-Luc Dubois to file for arbitration next summer, which is the only thing he has to do to guarantee hitting unrestricted free agency as early as is possible, which is summer 2024. And I don't think that if you're Winnipeg, you want to mess with that. I think that that's a deal that gets made next summer. And at the draft, with draft picks in play, prospects in play, cap space not an issue, I think that's the timeline that you might see resolution for good on that front.
Any thought on why he just signed the qualifying offer? I mean, I was surprised just that I'm pretty sure there would be more money left on the table, even if they had the arbitration date and had to negotiate getting closer to that to avoid it and sort of tone down the temperature of what had been going on.
Yeah, you know what? I've asked around about that because it's a curious decision. It's also a curious timeline because the qualifying offer got made official, got announced on Monday of one week. And Dubois signed it, or that became official Friday of the following week. That's a substantial break in time. And so I wonder to myself, why? Was he waiting for something? Is there a theoretical hope that there's an offer sheet, even as unlikely as those typically are? That's a curious thing. But why do it at all? Why 1 year, $6 million qualifying offer? And that's where this idea of arbitration and multiple consecutive years of offensive excellence comes from for me. I think that there was a thought that in a 1 year deal or in a 2 year deal, if for some reason Winnipeg chose that route, that maybe $6 million was close to what he was going to get anyways. If there was a difference, it was not enormous. And that surprises me because I value the player at more than $6 million. But I think that there was a concern that arbitration in and of itself was not going to make so much more than $6 million for the player, that leaving that window of perhaps an offer sheet or any of that sort of stuff open seemed to be worth it at the time. And that's my best guess.
Yeah, I think you're onto that as well. And, and again, part of the reason why the Jets didn't elect for the arbitration, as you had mentioned, is, I think to, cool things down a little bit, the temperature. But, for all that being said, I guess that's happened in the short term with this particular situation. Listening to the fans on this program each and every day, while the goals of the Jets are to, improve and get back to where I think people thought they were capable of being last year in that disappointing season. There hasn't been much positive happen so far for the Jets. I mean, you've lost Paul Stastny, you've lost Eric Comrie, Svechnikov's gone without any significant additions. And Murat, the clock is ticking. We're going to be into August after this weekend, a traditionally very slow time. Is there still time for Kevin Cheveldayoff to accomplish what he wants to do this offseason? Or is the market, and we'll get to what the market told us about the John Klingberg deal in a minute, is the market essentially handcuffing general managers, especially one here in Winnipeg, to maybe potentially change the plan? Because at some point, there are some new bodies that need to get in here, and we know about the surplus on the blue line, regardless of what the situation with Blake Wheeler is.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I do think that they're in a difficult spot. I mean, their most likely trade chip is Blake Wheeler. And I think that, I've heard that since the draft, I mean, they were shopping him fairly aggressively at that point, aside from being willing to eat a substantial amount of money on that deal. So that's an interesting one for me. I don't think that in and of itself should hamper the Winnipeg Jets, because they still have, even with Mason Appleton's arbitration date, August 11th, if he comes in at around $2 million, I could see about $3 million or so of flexibility, even with Wheeler on the roster, and even with all the veteran defensemen on the roster as well. And you've seen over the years that when teams desperately want to get out of a contract, they can. If they truly believe that any of their players are albatross contracts, whether it's retaining salary, which maybe ownership wouldn't necessarily be willing to do, or trading players for less than what they're worth. Time and time again, we see that you can move the Milan Lucic's of the world if it comes to it. And I don't think that Wheeler or Nate Schmidt or Brendan Dillon or any of these players are approaching that. So if there's a lack of action on Winnipeg's part, it's not necessarily because it's impossible to do what they might like to do, but I think that the approach is a little bit more down the middle, down, mainstream, and there's a certain amount of, big swings or ambition or creativity that it would take to reshape things. And so I believe Kevin Cheveldayoff when he says that he thinks that he can win, or Winnipeg can compete for the playoffs with the roster that it has. I believe that that's his true opinion of the matter, and that any tweaks will be in and around this $3 million mark. That could be bad news for Ville Heinola, Dylan Sandberg, other players looking for minutes on this team. But of course, we have a new coaching staff in town as well, and we'll see what they have to say on the matter. I sincerely think that barring a Wheeler trade, moves will be relatively minor at this point.
Yeah. Now, the thing about the Wheeler trade, and we were kind of chopping this up yesterday on the program, is that I know they don't have an appetite to take on just basically eat a bunch of salary and pay Blake to, score goals and, put up points for another team. You'd like to have some sort of return, but at the same time, Murat, we're talking about a league where Max Pacioretty, with just 1 year left at $7 million, just got basically traded for future considerations. So I think it maybe is harder. Certainly, if you're not maintaining any salary that we've seen before, and I don't think you can possibly make an argument that makes the Jets better on the ice next year. It's quite clear that this trade and the discussions about it partly might be that he was looking for a change of scenery, but I think from the team's perspective is all about the culture, the leadership group, the dressing room, and all of that. And because, as I said, you can't make the argument that taking a guy that scores and has been as productive as he has been, despite playing a lot, if he's odd on what you would get back in that sort of a trade, is going to make the Jets better on the ice, at least on paper. Which then brings me to the question, if this doesn't happen and you've already been at that spot, how difficult of a situation is that maybe putting a guy like Rick Bowness in before he's even done a practice here in Winnipeg with the team that had their fair share of issues internally last season? Is pretty clear.
Well, Winnipeg doesn't need to get rid of a middle six capable forward who can play on the power play and be effective there for free. Like, in terms of his on-ice value, that's not something that Winnipeg needs to do. It needs another middle six forward who can score and succeed on the power play, more so than it needs to get rid of one for nothing. And that sticker shock of Pacioretty, like you just named, could be something that's hitting the team. As well as, I don't think that they make decisions this way, but in terms of saving face, they made a long-term $8.25 million bet on this player and on this human being. That's effectively what that contract extension was. It was saying this is the guy with whom we can compete for the Stanley Cup before 2024. And then to be giving that player away for essentially nothing, that's not a lot of face saved by the organization, I think, or by, if you're trying to do right by Blake Wheeler and here's trading Winnipeg's captain, you don't get much, if anything, for return. That's an awkward situation. So then you look at, can you run it back, as is the phrase of the summer, and get value for him on the ice? And I think what you need to see in Winnipeg, and this can come from coaching. Blake Wheeler doesn't coach, though he is certainly a strong personality within that room. I think Blake Wheeler is a second line or a third line at times player at 5-on-5 at this stretch, based on his offensive production and based on his, he used to be a fairly highly rated defensive player as well, but he's not having that impact anymore. Can he do that and accept it and cheer for it and not be sour grapes and not have an impact on youth in that room and sort of maintain a welcoming nature towards all of those young players that he spent the last several seasons whenever things were going wrong. Well, we're still a young team. We're still a young team, even when objectively they were a middle of the road or even an older team in the NHL at different times. And, he may hold different private beliefs than what he said publicly. It just seems like youth has been an easy scapegoat for him over the last several years. And it's just tough to see, it's tough to see that transition being self-motivated. So that makes Rick Bowness's job tough. Can you do with Wheeler what you did with, Seguin and Ben or what have you in Dallas? And I think that Wheeler's probably a stronger personality than that. I think that there's probably more of a stubborn determination in that, at least if media presence is to be trusted. Of course, that's not always the same. Behind closed doors, it can be different. So that's a tough spot to be in. You're asking the coach to do something that is conceivably within his grasp. It's not impossible, but it sounds hard. And it's hard for me to sit here and say, if they did all of that, if they returned everybody exactly as it's listed today, do I see a playoff team? Gosh, man, that's difficult.
Well, and the other side of it, I mean, if you, like me, believe that the intention of making a move of Blake Wheeler was to turn over the leadership core, to open up the captaincy for another player, or maybe just have it open and, see how it develops and who sort of steps up in. And obviously the Dubois, if he had signed an 8-year deal, he would have been a guy we'd be talking about that might be in the mix. There's nothing really clear right now about that. But knowing that was the case, and I think that was obviously the impetus for the majority of these discussions, if that doesn't happen and Wheeler is back and most of the suspects, usual suspects from last year are there, you do wonder if where's the C? Do they just start off basically where they were last year? Everyone's got a clean slate. Rick Bowness is here and go forward. I'll say this, whether that works or not, I can tell you that will not inspire a lot of confidence and optimism amongst fans that watched the 82 games last season.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I would understand that. If you're looking for reasons to believe that this team is going to transform its goal differential, that it's going to get that much better at defense, that all of that public stuff we heard at the end in those exit interviews is going to go away, I don't think running it back gives you a lot of confidence in that way. So, I started to go down this thought process too. Who could be the next captain in Winnipeg? Would it be simple elevation of Josh Morrissey or Mark Scheifele? Could Adam Lowry find himself wearing a letter as well? I think that he's somebody I could see emerging as a letter wearer in Winnipeg's future. But then you look at it just like on the ice. If you're trying to figure out how this team is going to be good, the number one thing that Winnipeg needs to do is allow less goals, spend less time in its own zone. You're going to get likely a little bit of regression from Connor Hellebuck. And by regression, I mean a regression upwards, a more impressive season than you got last season. That's not a guarantee, but that's an easy way to shave some goal differential in your direction. You also hope that Rick Bowness, his veteran coach who's been around, who's seen it all, who's nonplussed by all of this, actually can have a positive impact on Winnipeg's defensive structure and the amount of plans that they have and the amount of routes that they run and the amount of transition hockey that they can play as well. Because he had a above average team defensively in Dallas. Scoring was the issue. Defending was not so much. And so you're putting an awful lot of weight on that coach. It seems to be doable. If you believe that Brendan Dillon, Nate Schmidt, and the other additions from last summer are quality, if you believe in Morrissey and Pionk and a Pionk regression as well, there are reasons to think you can move some goal differential in the right direction. But even with some wins in both of that, in goaltending and defense, strictly based on Bowness as a coach, I still think that you're flirting with that playoff cut line.
Yeah, well, and listen, I just get back to the entire, hypothesis of the potential Wheeler trade. That was a trade that was to change something significant and fix it. And if that is not the case and it doesn't happen, where does that leave the team going forward? And as far as guys that would be next up, Morrissey obviously has the term of the contract and would be a logical guy. I think Adam Lowry makes the most sense, as almost like, if you recall in 1.0, a Chris King type of player. He's not your top line guy, but he's incredibly respected, loved by his teammates. You know what you get from him every night, and would be a guy. I think the amount of time that they would consider Mark Scheifele as being that guy if they were moving over right now would be about a nanosecond, considering last season. It is hilarious how, we've been talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois and the Wheeler situation, but I mean, we can't forget the way the season ended and what we heard from Mark Scheifele. I mean, as much as there's going to be a big spotlight on those other two guys, for me personally, the guy that I want to hear from the most and actually see put action behind, hopefully, words that we want to hear is 55 when this season gets going, because he, over all of the others, has the ability to be the most impactful player if he is engaged like that. And on the other side of things, if he's not, like we saw at times last season, it has an absolutely terrible effect on the rest of the team, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, it is a problem when your most capable player is so far from being your best player. I think that is it for me. I mean, we've heard for a couple of seasons now, Mark Scheifele talk a confident, good, solid game defensively. Oh, you don't get rewarded every time, he says, but when you hustle back, you can turn that into offense, and you just have to keep doing the right thing over and over again. And we've heard him say that for multiple off seasons, and we haven't seen it happen. We just absolutely have not seen it happen. Even with there should be an acknowledgement of his COVID impacted start and all of that other stuff at the beginning of last season. But as the year went on and things got derailed, and you saw more and more of that cheat in his game, and staying above the puck in his defensive zone more and more often, being also on screen when his man's the one going in and getting rebounds and scoring. I mean, the video of Mark Scheifele's season does not show a defensively engaged player. And for the first half of the season, it doesn't show an offensively successful one. Even though he was trying as hard as he could, he wasn't scoring. And only in that stretch, only right before he got hurt, coming out of the All-Star break, was everything going in for him and his teammates when he was setting them up. And it reminded us of the guy that he can be. That coast-to-coast goal against Colorado, you were reminded, wait a second, Mark Scheifele can do things that other players can't. So I don't know if he was just bad bounces, exhaustion, fatigue, this behind-the-scenes stuff. I don't know if he was just looking around at Dave Lowry's defensive schemes and offensive schemes and thinking, oh man, this doesn't make sense to me. It seemed from afar, and again saying I'm not in this player's head. I haven't even asked him about it. I haven't talked to Mark Scheifele since his last interview with the Winnipeg Jets media, right? But it seemed like a player who was pouting. It seemed like a player who was looking at a difficult situation and not taking it upon himself to be the answer to solve it. And yes, the Jets need him in a huge way right now, especially with uncertainty with respect to Dubois. But I can easily imagine us hitting September camp, asking all of these questions about what happened last year and all of that, getting the right answer, got to back check 200 feet, new coach, okay, great. And then what happens when things get hard mid-season? Is this player going to consistently show up for his teammates and back check like a Paul Stastny would back check, or you know what I mean in that front? The error bars on guessing how positively impactful Mark Scheifele will be this year are wide. It could be anything.
Murat at The Athletic with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Quickly, before we go, I got to ask you, what did you make of Klingberg? A 1-year deal at $7 million to a team that will not be contending for the Cup next year. Remo had a great description. It's almost like Anaheim is buying a future first-round pick because he, in all likelihood, is going to be traded at the deadline. But, for a guy that was pretty much at the top of a very thin group of defensemen, for him to sign for only 1 year with the Anaheim Ducks is shocking. And I think that's further evidence that this cap crunch for so many teams it's not just the lower class of the free agent group. It's even impacting top guys on the list like Klingberg and, of course, Kadri that hasn't signed yet.
Yeah, you know what? This is a good point. And where I would start my guess is the percentage of total cap hit used up league-wide today, this year versus last year versus historically. And, obviously coming out of 2020, fan revenue being hit quite a lot, pandemic impacting so much revenue on all this front, we've seen sort of an artificially restricted cap growth in a way that we haven't seen in ages and ages and ages. And I think at the front end of that, because it was almost impossible to anticipate, but also because, spenders are what they are, especially on free agency days, is I think that people spent into that space probably like substantially enough to eat away at that cap space league-wide. Is that why Klingberg was sort of squeezed out in that way? Maybe. Is that what is happening with Kadri? Maybe. But I believe you. Like, without having done the homework to prove that a higher percentage of the cap has been used up at this point, I believe it. I absolutely do. And I think that teams, like I say, spent into that space disproportionately early on in this, and now are sort of being made to pay for that. Good for Anaheim, though, because there's some research that says that that tries to attach a dollar figure to first-round picks and things like that in terms of wealth. So if that's their play, maybe they're onto something.
Yeah, well, I mean, Klingberg is going to be an asset that a lot of playoff-bound teams would like to add. They probably can't do it right now. They didn't feel comfortable with the long term, but they'll have an opportunity to get him, albeit as a rental later on at the end of the season. Murat, thanks so much for doing this. Have a wonderful long weekend.
Right on, Hess. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Give him a follow on Twitter at WPG Murat and make sure you're subscribing and reading to all of his work in The Athletic. All right, still to come. We will do a marble race heading into the long weekend at the end of the program. We're going to have the Hacksaw join us in just a couple minutes. Of course, great CFL game tonight. BC and the Riders, and then tomorrow it's Bombers, Calgary. No better spot to get together with you and your gang to watch the big game than your local Boston Pizza. Check out their great new summer menu featuring the carnitas, tacos, and pizzas. Pizza flights are back as well, and of course their great happy hour specials 7 days a week. And hey, if you're staying at home watching the game, check out their game day deals and order online at bostonpizza.com. And tell you what goes great with the weekend, the drink of the summer, the new Canadian club, Ready to Drink, CC and Ginger Ale. I know lots of people were sipping them at Super Spike last week out at the Stampede, the last Bomber game. Wherever you're going this weekend, pop by, grab a six-pack at your local beer store or Manitoba Liquor Marts, and up your cocktail game in the simplest way possible with the Ready to Drink, CC and Ginger. By the way, WST Audio Gremlin yesterday won the Valor tickets. We have not heard from the WST Audio Gremlin. So if you do want to go to the Valor game tomorrow, just send a quick email to winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. Just put Valor tickets in the subject line, and we'll pick a winner after the show, and I'll fire off a pair of tickets courtesy of our friends at Canadian Club. And of course, if you're at the game tomorrow afternoon, you can grab a CC and Ginger Ale while you watch Valor FC take on Pacific. All right, we'll get to the Coolbet lines in a minute. But right now, let's welcome in the return of the legend himself, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. NFL training camps are underway in all 32 venues, and the Hacksaw's back on WST. How's the summer been, my friend? Get away at all?
Hey, Hustler, nice to hear from you. Things are going well. Glad to celebrate Beer Friday with you now that we're back in with the NFL Notebook segments, and busy time. I'm covering the NFL, but I'm also covering baseball and the pennant races and the trading deadline and the NBA and NHL free agency. There's always things to cover out here, including the defection of UCLA and USC to the Big Ten and college football. So there's a ton of stuff to talk about.
The college football, I mean, I can't even wrap my head around what's happened to the landscape of that. I mean, that would take an hour conversation just to do that. And by the way, if you're looking for something good to be watching on the tube, I guess 6 o'clock our time, 4 o'clock West Coast time tomorrow, ESPN2. Bombers looking to go 8-0 against the Calgary Stampeders will be great. Hey, listen, before we get to the NFL, you just mentioned baseball. I have to ask you this, Lee. There's been lots of talk about Soto potentially being on the move from the Nationals after turning down that $400+ million contract. We've heard in the last 24 hours that potentially Shohei Ohtani, the unicorn, could potentially be traded. Is that just smoke right now, or is there some reality behind that, do you think?
Well, topic A is correct. Soto is going to be traded by Tuesday's 3 p.m. West Coast time trading deadline. We don't know whether it's going to be to San Diego, whether it's going to be to the Dodgers, whether it might be possibly to the St. Louis Cardinals have kind of entered the fray. Topic B, Angels were taking phone calls on Ohtani. I don't think they want to sell him. I don't think they want to trade him. They're a miserable mess with injuries. They have no pitching, but they do have and they do have Mike Trout, and they got a ton of young arms that they're trying to fast forward in the farm system. Angels are a deplorable product on the field right now. They've had so many injuries. It's just hopeless. But that being said, that's a great player. It's a generational player. It's a lifetime player. He's doing what Babe Ruth was the last one to do. His batting average is 256 with 23 home runs. His ERA is 2.81 as a two-positional player, Andrew. I don't think the Angels would move him because he's beloved in Anaheim. I think the other thing is this is finances. I mean, the amount of money that the Angel baseball franchise generates in the Pacific Rim in sponsorships, advertising, etc., is phenomenal. So I don't, as dreary as their roster is, as lousy as the season has been, I don't think they're going to trade Ohtani. So that's topic A. That's topic B.
All right. I can tell you there was a lot of, fans of every team just thinking about the potential of getting that guy in the lineup. I mean, it's one of those things. Do what you have to do. And been some interesting conversations of what the Blue Jays might be able to get to Ohtani and the impact that a player like that would have on the franchise outside of the market as well. But Lee, let's get to the National Football League. Lots of talk, quarterback talk around the league. What is happening in Cleveland? What is Deshaun Watson's situation, and why have we not heard of a suspension yet, considering everything that's happened over the course of the past 2 years?
Well, it's a very valid question. It's a very complex answer. He is in Cleveland's camp. He is in classroom work. He is taking snaps. He's going to get suspended. This is out of the hands of the National Football League and Roger Goodell. This is in the hands of the NFL discipline officer, that judge, Sue Roberts. She's going to hand down the ruling. Now, she held 3 days of hearings a couple weeks ago where the lawyers representing Deshaun Watson made their case heard. The NFL made their investigation heard. She's taken all that information. Then she took briefs from each of the two lawyers. The arguing point is not what he did, but how many people and how egregious what he did is. And the NFL is mandating a 1-year suspension, and they're calling it indefinite. He would have to appeal his reinstatement. The union representing the player is of the opinion that he was not indicted by 2 grand juries. He was not charged by police with anything. He's made out-of-court settlements. So therefore, he's not guilty of anything except maybe bad judgment. NFL views it really differently. The union wants no suspensions, just because of what I said about the legal aspect. The NFL wants 1 year plus the fact he has to appear before the commissioner for reinstatement. And somewhere in between, that judge has to make that decision. The big issue, as it was explained to me, is they had negotiated. They had talked, well, maybe not a year, but maybe not 0, maybe in the middle, 8. The NFL, evidently, I was told, proposed 8-game suspension. You waive the right to appeal. The union said, no. It's in the collective bargaining agreement. Whatever the discipline is, we can appeal it. NFL came back and said, no, this is a negotiated settlement. You're agreeing to 8 games. You have to waive the appeal. They said no. The other reason why the NFL wants the word indefinite put into this equation is they're fearful that there are other women out there. We know of 26. There's a report there may be as many as 66, some of whom still might come forward. Under Article 46 of the NFL Collective Bargaining Agreement, a player disciplined for an incident, a crime, whatever, can only be disciplined 1 time. So if the league agrees to 8 games, or the league gets the 1 year, and then he's reinstated, if 66 women show up suddenly and say, yeah, he did it to me too, NFL has no recourse. They can't go back in and penalize him a second time. I sense that's why this thing has been so dragged out. Complex answer. It has to come to a head pretty quickly. And I would think by maybe next Friday when the preseason games begin, Watson's going to get a suspension. The length, well, they tried to negotiate. It didn't work. I got to believe it's 8 games to 1 year at least.
Do you think there's buyer's remorse on the Browns' part right now, considering, they haven't even got to a game yet, but ever since they made this deal and gave up so much to get him, it's been one problem after another, and all of the issues that he had when they traded for him are still there, if not worse.
Unresolved. That's the big issue. Do they have any remorse? No, they're pretty arrogant. They're going to get him. They're going to wind up getting him for 5 years under contract at mega pay once he gets suspended and then serves it and it gets reinstated. But, going forward, good luck, Cleveland Browns fan. We're angry before. Think about this year. Now you got Jacoby Brissett and Josh Dobbs as your quarterbacks. in the NFL. Now they got a great defense, but defense can't play 60 minutes a game. So this is a really messy situation. And under the personal conduct policy, and that involves everything. That involves DUI, that involves domestic abuse, that could involve robbery. It obviously could involve drug dealing. But this is so egregious that he did this for such a long period of time. The fact that the Houston Texans kind of got dragged into it as being one of his enablers, and Houston settled 20 of the lawsuits out of court themselves that they've been named in. This is just, it's a terrible, terrible look for Deshaun Watson, the person. It's a terrible blow, I think, to the Cleveland Browns as a franchise. But they're going to go ahead and play, and they got a great defense, and somebody will have to quarterback the team, but it probably won't be Deshaun Watson at least the first half of the season.
Lee Hacksaw Hamilton with us here on WST. A lot's been made of Kyler Murray's new contract. Now, the amount of money that he got, the years, I think it's a risk, but you know how important that position is. But that addendum in the contract about the study requirements, I think it's quite clear what it says about the player and what their concerns were going forward. Why did they take it out of the contract? Is that just saving face? And what are your thoughts on the investment that this team's made in Kyler Murray, considering what we've seen and heard in the past and what was in the deal that they signed?
Hustler, in the NFL, if you got a good quarterback, good for you. If you don't have a good quarterback, good luck trying to find one. It's a quarterback's league. That's why everybody's making the kind of money they're making at that position, and every contract with some new star is above what the last star got. Murray's a really good football player. Now, the whole pile of things that go under that. Murray has not played well at the end of each of the last couple of seasons, but that's an organizational thing. I think that's a head coach Cliff Kingsbury thing. They put better players around him. He's got to stay healthy. Got to protect him. Needs to stop running the football. He'll probably do that just because he's been so banged up a couple years in a row. But the clauses, you're right. I mean, it's an indictment coming out of left field about the player not being a student of the game, has to be a student of the game. I guess it stuns me that, quote, this got out, that there was a study hall clause in there, that he had to spend 4 additional hours with coaches in film. Not what he does Monday through Thursday, 4 additional hours. So it's a pretty significant condemnation about game prep, and you would think this deep into his career, he'd be a much more student of the game rather than just relying on athleticism. And it was weird that leaked out. Now they've kind of eradicated it, so it'll probably go away. It'll resurface if their win-loss record isn't real good. And if you track back the end of the season records of that head coach, not only with Arizona, but prior to that, Texas Tech, it's absolutely stunning. It's like 9-41 at the end of the seasons, its last 3 years in college, and what happened in the NFL.
Lee, I'm fascinated in what happens in San Francisco. We heard Kyle Shanahan say that they're going forward with Trey Lance, who they traded all those picks to draft as the #1 QB. They were very complimentary with Jimmy Garoppolo, with what he's done for the franchise. And of course, Jimmy is coming back from off-season surgery. Is this as simple as Jimmy Garoppolo is now a backup in the National Football League, or will he have a new home for a QB-needy team at some point in the future?
Well, I think in terms of Trey Lance, everybody's spoken volumes of positive things about him, his approach, leadership ability, obviously his athletic skill. Now we'll find out whether this is all true. The Garoppolo situation, they owe him 1 year, $25 million, but it's not guaranteed. They're holding on to him right now, because he's not 100% healthy. He's got to pass somebody's physical. He is throwing on the side. He's at practice, but he's not at practice. He's throwing on the side. So far, so good from what I've been told in terms of the rehab. They're holding on to him because he's a mini asset. And they gave his agent about 10 days ago permission to seek a trade. So the agent went to NFL clubs. I think Seattle was one of them. And I think Seattle told them, well, we're not paying $25 million for Jimmy Garoppolo. He needs to take a big pay cut, needs to restructure down like Baker Mayfield did when Mayfield went from Cleveland to Carolina. That was his exit visa by agreeing to take restructure down. If Garoppolo is willing to go down to $10 million and then pack the contract with bonuses, then maybe there's some type of conditional trade made for a 6th or a 7th round pick. If not, he counts against Frisco's cap, but Frisco can release him and not have any salary cap hits. I think everybody's playing the waiting game, But I was told Seattle made the first call. I think Houston is back in the conversation. But again, Jimmy G has to take a major pay restructure down. Maybe it's part of an extension, or maybe it's just pay restructure down and bonus clauses if it's starting to have success. Keep in mind, though, that his career record as a starter is 31-14. That's pretty good. Now, his career record is also a lot of injuries, and now he's coming off the shoulder injuries. So stay tuned. A week from today in our next NFL Notebook segment, he may have a new mailing address. I don't think Frisco wants to keep him on the roster at a $25 million eat-up cap space. If they can't get anything for him, they'll probably release him. He'll go free on the market, and then he's going to sign a real low-budgeted contract. So it's a waiting game, and everybody's is playing both sides against the middle. What's the best deal I can get?
Well, Lee, we'll have some time over the next few weeks to get ready for the season and maybe focus in on some of the divisions and the other big stories around the league. But before we go today, I'm just, at this point where training camp is open, everyone's got some optimism for the most part. What are, in your opinion, which coaches in the league have the hottest seats going into week one?
Well, if you pay attention to what's being written by the insiders, they're saying Dallas. And Jerry Jones says, no, Mike McCarthy is my guy. We chose Mike McCarthy to lead us back to the Super Bowl. But Sean Payton is out there. And Payton keeps dropping hints. He will coach in 2023. So I would say, yeah, there's no doubt that Mike McCarthy's seat is probably as hot as the weather is outside at the Star in Texas. He's got to win. Now, obviously, he's got an awful lot of bullets in the gun. He's got a lot of really good football players. And Jerry Jones has always provided his coaches with an enormous amount of talent. But I'd say his is really a hot seat. The other one, and I wouldn't say hot seat, but this bears watching. New England is not what New England used to be under Belichick. Of course, there's no Tom Brady. But Belichick's drafts have really been substandard, not really good. That's not a really good team. Now, granted, they drafted the kid quarterback last year, Mac Jones, out of Bama, and he played pretty well till he ran out of gas at the end of the season. He started losing players with injuries. But they say that Mac Jones has taken a step up in terms of productivity, classroom work, etc. Now, he doesn't have his coordinator with him. Josh McDaniels is gone. That's going to be interesting to see. A very strange configuration of Belichick's staff. So I think Belichick, you're going to have to keep an eye. Is this going to be suddenly mediocrity squared? Are they going to be a 500 team going forward because Belichick hasn't drafted well and doesn't sign a lot of free agents and lets guys go because he didn't want to pay them? Fascinating to see what the Patriots are going to be with Belichick and whether he's going to be held accountable by Robert Kraft somewhere down the road.
Hey, what about Matt Rule in Carolina? I mean, he got that big deal to come out of Baylor, and they've stunk for the last couple of years. There's been a lot of talk about maybe trading some big-time assets. I mean, is he a guy that, because of how much he's making and how long he's making it for, has a little bit of extra rope, or is this a show and prove season for Rule?
I think both. David Tepper, the owner, is a very volatile guy. I can't see him tolerating very many 3-13 or 4-12 or 5-11 seasons. But, they had Cam Newton and they let him go and because of injuries and all that, and have really staggered and struggled. Now they make a trade that I think's got great upside. I mean, they got Baker Mayfield at a real affordable price. Cleveland's paying half the salary. He took a pay cut to make it work. And then Carolina's only paying $3.5 million of Baker Mayfield's salary. Now, that being said, they also have about $25 million of quarterbacks on that roster because they got one more year of Sam Darnold's $18 million contract. If Mayfield can have a successful season, then I think that he'll probably save Matt Rule's job. But please, you're a smart guy. Your producer's a smart guy. I'm a smart guy. Can you name anybody on the Carolina roster that thinks to stand out aside from who's at quarterback and Christian McCaffrey? Because I sure can't.
Yeah.
That's kind of a ragtag roster.
It starts there. Lee, great stuff. With everything else going on, give a quick plug for your award-winning website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. What's cooking up heading into this long weekend we've got up here?
Well, listen, sucker, you did it, so I can do it. So you are very successful doing what you're doing in Winnipeg. And I have now ventured into the podcast world.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. I just dove headfirst into it last week. It's beyond me, but I'm doing it. I got my website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. I write on it every day, a ton of information. And if you Google Lee Hacksaw Hamilton YouTube, somewhere out there in the universe, you'll see the first couple of podcasts that I did. One was on the history of sports talk radio here on the West Coast. And the one I just completed today is on the baseball trading deadline. So it's fun to watch. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it pretty well, much like you. I see that squirrel look on your face. I understand it. So it's just a new world that we're living in. Who would have ever thought this when you and I first met up, that I was yelling at sports fans in San Diego, you were screaming at people in Manitoba, and now we're, quote, TV stars?
Oh, that is phenomenal news, Lee. Well, Remo's the brains of the operation when it comes to that stuff, but we'll make sure to get that link out and people get on over there to Lee's channel and make sure to subscribe and check out the content. Have a great weekend, Lee. We'll catch up next week.
My pleasure. Enjoy Beer Friday. Glad to be back. Thanks, Andy.
You got it. Crack a cold one for Hacksaw, folks. There he is. Great to have Lee back. And I'm fired up for the upcoming season. My entire Twitter feed. I think I have so many Chiefs follows right now. Every single play in practice comes up 2 or 3 times in my feed right now. But I'll tell you what, I am here for it. All right, Friday afternoon. You know what that means. By the way, if you missed it, do have an extra pair of tickets for the Valor game. So if you are interested in that, send an email to winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. I'll pick a winner afterwards and send the tickets. 2:00 game tomorrow. Great way to get ready for the Bomber game. But Remo, let's get back in here. We've had a very busy show so far. The long weekend is just about here, and we know what we have to do. We got to get things going for the world famous WST marble race. You want to open it up, and then we can hit the Coolbet lines while people drop it in the chat.
Yeah, let me just get it started. I had to update the marble game during the segment, so your video was getting kind of wonky. That's why I was updating the marble race.
Great planning.
I don't know.
Great planning.
Yeah, I should do it really before the show. I didn't. So, oh well. It didn't affect the audio. Audio is key. So I haven't opened the thing. Give me 1 second.
Oh, good stuff. So anyways, if you're new, this is something we do at the end of the show on Fridays. We've got some great prizes from our friends at Canadian Club. We've got our hoodies. Corey, by the way, won last week. He's picking up. He was a medium. I think we have all sizes still, with the exception of XXX. So hopefully though I do have some Coolbet hoodies of that size that we could probably hook you up, and I'm sure we'll be getting some more for football season. But as soon as Remo throws in the chat that we are open and good to go. There it is. !marbles. So all you need to do in the YouTube chat, put !marbles. And you do have to be subscribed to win. So if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? It's completely free. Hit that red subscribe button and make sure you're subscribed to WST. And if you don't see the shows live when we're on YouTube, you can just hit YouTube at any point, and the latest WST content will be there ready and waiting for you. All right, throw it in, folks. !marbles. And while we fill that in, let's do our Coolbet lines. But just quickly, speaking of Coolbet, Taylor Pendrith, the Coolbet athlete, is now 5 under for his round through 8, and he has a 3-shot lead at the Rocket Mortgage over my guy Tony Finau and Cameron Young right now. What a great story for the young Canadian. This would be pretty sure this is the first time he's ever been leading. And, man, to be playing in the final group, if he can stay in the lead at the end tomorrow, would be a great step forward for the young Canadian. Give a lot of us something to look for coming up on the weekend. As far as the Coolbet lines for tonight, 3 CFL games. We've got one tonight, and it's BC and Saskatchewan. And I'll be honest, I'm stunned that the Riders are now a 1-point favorite. BC was as high as 2 or 2.5 earlier this week. So Saskatchewan right now, even money is a 1-point favorite. BC laying -120 and getting a point. But the money line, and this is where it's strange, the money line favors the BC Lions. So -114 for the team to win, and the Riders -103 on the money line. Certainly it makes more sense to bet the Riders to win at -103 than lay a point at +100. And Bombers and Stamps, this one is going towards the Bombers. I thought we might get to a straight pick 'em. It was -110 on both sides yesterday. Not anymore. The Bombers are a -132 money line favorite, and the Stamps are +108 to win. And as far as the spread goes, Bombers -1.5. Calgary getting 1.5 points at home, and the total in that game is 46. There hasn't been much movement at all in the Argos Red Blacks game. Toronto still a 5.5 point favorite for the Sunday finale. That's a 4 o'clock game here on 4 o'clock game in Winnipeg. All games on TSN. Busy weekend for my lock shop partner, Dustin Nielsen. He'll be calling the game tonight at Mosaic. And then we'll also have the call tomorrow between the Bombers and the Calgary Stampeders. And a quick look at the Blue Jays. They're taking on the Detroit Tigers. They won again last night and covered the run line. Huge favorites tonight, minus 340. And the run line's actually 2.5. If it's to win by 2, minus 182. You got to get all the way to win by 3 to get close to even money. All the odds are there for you at Coolbet. And if you haven't already, use the promo code WST on your first deposit. We'll give you a 100% bonus up to $200 over at Coolbet. All right, we have had a packed show, Remo, but the weekend doesn't officially start until we drop the marbles. Folks, last call in the chat. If you haven't already, just simply go into the YouTube chat, put in ! marbles, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll wrap it up and get this thing going. What have you picked out a track yet today?
No, I haven't yet. I'm trying to see how many names we got. I'm just looking at our subscriber numbers. We're 50 away from 8K. So if you're here and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? I know, I think it's like 50% of people who watch aren't hitting the red subscribe button. What are you doing?
People, help us out.
Make a YouTube account. It'll track you. It'll recommend you all the best stuff. It knows exactly what you like.
This is the future, people.
Yeah, this is exactly. Well, I keep seeing on Twitter, This Week in Radio is Dead, well, there's a nice article by Sean Fitzgerald how the Ticats took over their own radio rights, and our guy Adam Steborn tweeting that seems to be the way things are going. And I keep seeing tweets about the Fan in Toronto replaying content. So hey, we're here. We're the future. We're living in now. And
day in, day out here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah.
We're here for you. Although I will be away for the first time in a long time next week for a couple days. Remo will be holding it down, and then later on next month, he'll be taken off for a little bit, and that will be the true test for Winnipeg Sports Talk, if we can actually run a show with Remis away. Plenty of negotiations behind the scenes to figure out how we're going to pull that off, but you know that we will. All right, let's do this. Let's close up the... Todd for Tanny. Everyone's coming out. By the way, shout out to Theo Seegers. Theo, longtime listener from day one, old 1290 guy. Great chance to meet him earlier this week when he popped by and picked up his hoodie for his win in the marble race of a couple weeks ago. But all right, Remo, let's get her done and get after it.
Sure, I'll close the entries. We got 140 people in here. That's
nicely done.
Impressive number. Hey, one thing, Huss, we came up at the end of yesterday's show about Adidas declining to renew their jersey sponsorship with the NHL. A lot of speculation who it's going to be. You were like, this isn't a big deal. It's a big deal to people who buy NHL apparel, NHL jerseys. I'm curious who's going to take it over in 2 years. Are they going to have redesigns? Is it going to be Nike? Is it going to be CCM? Who's the other one? And Fanatics would be the third one. And a lot of people upset about the way the jerseys, you have the Fanatics, what are they called? Breakaway jersey. And then the Adidas has their authentic jersey. But real jersey buyers know, Huss, that the product that Adidas was offering for retail as the authentic was not actually the authentic jersey, anything like it that the players were wearing. So I wonder how that's going to change in 2 years. So I just hope
they're good. I mean, I don't care. I don't have any loyalty to one particular brand, although as you pointed out, I'm not really a fan of Fanatics taking over the entire industry.
No, it's terrible.
I certainly hope that is not the case. And whether it's Nike or whether it's Reebok or whoever, I'm here for it. But I mean, before we even get to that, we haven't even seen the new reverse retros
Yeah.
that are going to come out next season. So I will worry about that down the road.
That's in 2 years. Well, one thing I think is we're not seeing a lot of Adidas apparel. And now that Adidas, the one thing I hope is a New Era hat wearer. If we see New Era get licensed for some NHL hats. We don't really get too many of those. Oh, what do you got there? Oh, is it a moose?
I
Are
got
you wearing that?
bucket, my moose bucket hat. It's ready for the fishing trip. When I got this, I said 100% I'll be taking this to Aikens this year, and now I'm just sort of getting my stuff ready, and I wanted to make sure I didn't forget that. But let's get this show on the
Okay.
road. A little marbles time.
Who am I throwing anyone else in to our race here?
Let's throw in our guest for today, Hacksaw,
Yeah.
Murat,
Yeah.
Double D Darren Dunn, and Ed Tait.
Yeah.
And then I think Dalton Schoen deserves a marble after his big WST bump and his incredible performance for all of us that bet him last week on the over and to get a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if we do the same thing tomorrow as well.
How about Pierre-Luc Dubois? You getting one?
Well, actually, yeah, you can. We said he's our favorite player because he's been the gift that keeps on giving throughout the last couple of weeks. So I guess we owe it to him. We don't know what he's having for dinner tonight. He might not either, but we do know that he's a contestant in the WST marble race.
We've seen a couple people suggest...
Oh, and Willie J for 50-50.
Sure, Willie J. We've seen a couple people suggest over this past week some chance to be. You don't have any good chance at what's it called now? Canada Life Center.
Yeah.
And people are saying for PLD, we need to chant what's for dinner for the next one. Because he doesn't even know what's going to be for dinner.
I'm not sure we really want to put all our efforts into chanting, basically trolling our own players.
Is that trolling or is that cheering him on? I think that's support.
That's trolling.
I had the hardest time deciding on what's for lunch.
I'm here for the argument that it is not trolling and it is somehow supporting Dubois. I'll hear it out, but I think that's laughable.
I think that's the most relatable thing you could say. I don't know what's for dinner. I have the hardest time deciding. I honestly spent 20 minutes today sitting here when I should have been doing work for the show, trying to figure out what I was going to have for lunch.
Oh,
So
you know
I'm
what?
here
Yeah,
for
we
that.
don't need to put PLD in, but can we still put one more marble in?
Sure.
Brooke Henderson.
Okay, so take
Brooke
out
Henderson,
PLD.
2 times. Yeah, Dubois is out.
Everyone says
Brooke
it's
Henderson's
trolling.
in.
Everyone says
It
it's
is trolling.
Maybe I didn't realize it was trolling. I thought it was in support.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I thought it was support. I didn't know.
Oh,
Okay, I
and
take
by
it
the way,
back.
okay, listen, you get that set up. Folks, go onto my Twitter profile. There's a tweet from last night that just simply says,
Hoping you were going to forget about
I
this.
smell a bidding war. And a character named Mr. Bob Dabalina, great track, has put out a tweet that said, now taking offers on this one-of-a-kind local art. An artist, Jay Backman, who did an incredibly detailed pencil sketch of an infamous Michael Remis headshot from 2012. There it is. I mean, this must have taken hours and hours. I mean, I think this is a pencil drawing, and
Yes.
this is one of Remo's more flamboyant pictures in the pack. I mean, he was big with these professional photo shoots back in the day, and this was one that was out there. So they are taking offers on this art right now. Gary got in the mix last night. So
Gary did?
Gary's already bid two lower bowl seats for the Jets in Vegas next year.
Okay, I think that would get it done because he was asking a lot for that because that is a hand pencil drawing. That's not like Jay Kilgore offered like $20 to.
He started it off, $20
That was the
Finn's
starting
gift certificate.
That's not even close. Like you would need a lot for that.
Well, as I said, it was an interesting selection of his muse for this beautiful picture, but there you have it. The star of WST, Michael Remis, is there. It is the glamour shot. He did. That belongs on Hammer's shelf at home. I may have to just get this and then have it pop up occasionally in the background while we're doing interviews here on WST.
You're gonna have to pay up, man. You're gonna have to pay up. It's gonna be more expensive than you think.
I hit a bonus on the VLT last night. I've made of money right now. It was the perfect timing to see this on it. Anyways, let's do these marbles and get going on the long weekend. By the way, I think I'm gonna be out at the Goldeyes game tonight. Should be a great night for baseball. So if you're out at the game, make sure to say hi. Thanks again to everyone that entered in our marble race today. And again, if you do win, we'll identify you at the end and send us an email of what your size is, and I'll contact you and get you set up to do a pickup, hopefully at some point next week before I get away for a couple days out to Aikens Lake. And shout out to Pitt and the Aikens Lake gang. Cannot wait to see you all next week. And I'll be trying to fire out some nice content to everyone here at Winnipeg Sports Talk. And hopefully Balls is going to bring the drone out, so we'll get some sick pictures of what we're doing out on the water next week over at Aikens Lake. But CTO, take it away.
Oh, hold on. I gotta figure out something screwed up here.
All right. You do not want to suffer Oleg's fate going over the top rope. We're into funnel. Is this the funnel, or what's this one called?
Twists and turns. They're all start the same.
I like it. Twists and turns. All right. So good luck to everyone that's in first place today. We've got a hoodie for you. Again, we've got all sizes with the exception we're out of double XL. We'll work on getting some new ones. And a big thanks to our friends at Canadian Club for their great support of prizing for the marble race. Good reason to try one of those CC and Gingers at some point this week. All right, without further ado, we're past 3 o'clock. We got to get the podcast up. But first, we drop the marbles on a Friday afternoon on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Let's go. All right, the chaos of the early funnel. Who will be the first marble down? Looks like Shane Mason's got a nice start. I see Kabilis. DJ Cool. I think DJ Cool won once, like a very early race, if I'm not mistaken. And DJ Cool seems to have the inside track on being the first marble down. It is DJ Cool in first, S. Elder, and Bozeman with a great start. Poor Bozeman had been in a bit of a slump as of late in his head-to-head wagers with our other friend Ross. But a great start early for Bozeman. DJ Cool still in first. Renee Dandino, Doug Phil in the mix. And S. Elder, sort of our top three right now. Mike Irving, Bozeman, David Asplund, all looking pretty good. Doug Phil over on the right side. But it's still DJ Cool with a slight lead over Renee Dandino. But Doug Phil, real great transition through that last funnel, has now taken first place, but it is tight, and frankly, it is just about anybody's race. Doug Phil into the next funnel. DJ Cool there. S. Elder, a wonderful transition. Is S. Elder still in, or is that going out? I think S. Elder's looking good.
There's two different ways here, S. Elders, and one way. Josh Conway now making a run on the other side.
Yeah, and he gets stuck a little bit by the red bar, but still in the mix. This is one heck of a race. We've got contestants on both sides. Who is going to be the first one in? Renee Dandino on the left, Winnipeg Chaster on the right, but it's Renee Dandino, another first-time winner here on WST. What a race today. That was very, very tight. Everyone into the mix. Winnipeg Chaster, Sylvia Martin right there at the end. Ken, Greg M. But our final results. Renee Dandino Ken 007, Winnipeg Chaster, Sylvia Martin, Greg M, Rob Mahoney, Comet, S. Elder, Josh Conway, and D20. We'll just wait for everything to come in, and we will do a quick scroll through the standings just to, if anyone did have some head-to-head bets with each other, they can make sure where they finished.
Yeah, people want to know where they finished after.
Brown-Eyed Girl, MJD, final through. Nicely done. So there you have it. So, Remo, just so people can go back and check. Bozeman, that's got to be your best one ever, Shorn. 11th place. Quite good. And I'm pretty sure you would have beaten Roscoe in this one today. But yeah, Remo, just give a nice scroll down. So if people do want to check it at some point, they'll know where they finished.
Sure, we're scrolling down here. I'm trying to see where our special guest marbles finished in.
Exactly. See. Mark Hewichenko, iHeart Gaming, Shay McGorn, Gregory Liverpool. Nice work, Greg. Dallas Pauls, I see there. Tristan Rivers Music, legendary muse of the Winnipeg digital sports scene.
Okay, wait, is this... I might have screwed up again, Huss. Did I? Is this today's?
Well, I don't know. No,
Did I do this again? I didn't see any of our special guests.
I don't know. Maybe they just didn't go in. Anyways, the bottom line is that Dan Dano, or sorry, was I pronouncing it wrong?
Because I don't see...
Dano, not Dan Dano. Or maybe that was... Dano. Yeah, I was saying Dan. I've got a couple friends named Dan Dano, but it's Renee Dano. So Renee, congratulations. WST or Winnipeg Sports Talk at gmail.com.
I may have done it again where I didn't put the names in. Possible. I have to do a redo.
Is Renee Dano here? I'm not there either. Winnipeg.
Man, he's not here because
God, Remis,
I did this again. I did it again. Yeah, I did it again. This is last week. I'm an idiot. Yeah, let me put it in. Why are you saying that? What do you mean? Why are you putting your head down?
Because we just wasted 5 minutes doing a marble race with the wrong contestants in it.
Oh, whatever. We'll do it again. Let's do the same one again. We'll do the same one. We'll just do it.
All right. Yeah, I know. I did like that course. That
was a good course. It was a good course, at least.
So we had never done this ever before. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had to do 3 marble races to get it done.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep doing that. I forgot to load the names. I get so fired up. Okay, let's do this one. Yeah. Okay, let's just do this again. That was not the real race.
Okay, do we have the right names?
Oh, one bird says the regulator is going to have to step in for an inquiry here.
Yeah, exactly. The regulator's here. Okay, so just to confirm, you got the right names in?
We're gonna have people tweeting at us from Australia who bet on that one.
Yeah. No doubt. Okay, just as long as let's just make sure that this is the one.
This is it. This is the right one. This is it.
Okay, folks. Winnipeg Sports Talk Marble Race heading into the long weekend. Take 2. Let's go.
Okay. Wasn't a waste. People like the marble race.
What a well, people do love it. There's no doubt about it. We could be doing these. We could just start our own marble race channel, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think so.
One bird with a nice start. I saw Brooke Henderson in the mix. Yaz Dude. Dino. No one's getting down there first. We're getting a little closer. Looks like Yaz Dude's first through.
Yeah. There's Murat there.
Oh, Murat's in the mix. Dino. Dalton Schoen in the mix too, and Willie J. Wow, a bunch of our added marbles are looking good right now. And again, if any of those win, we'll give it to the next one, the next person up. Yaz Dude's there. Miller Time, if there's a former winner, Miller Time's definitely been in. There's Ross, Dave the Fantasy, Prairie Boy, Doug Phil. Doug Phil going back to back has been a big contender in both of them. Prairie Boy, Dave the Fantasy. Oh, Yaz, dude, sick transition through that funnel. And look at Murat Atesh. Murat right there in the mix with Yaz, dude. And hot on Murat's trail is Prairie Boy and Dave LaFantasy and Dalton Schoen. But it's Murat and Yaz, dude, both going on the left side and opening up a bit of a lead on the rest of the competitors. Now, how this works right here will be key. They both got through the red gate, and now we are going down. This is really head-to-head. Murat and Yaz, dude. Paul in the back, but who will it be? Yaz, dude, going wire to wire, or Murat Atesh with the first ever guest win in WST history? Murat finishes second. It's Yaz, dude, and it all came out from an incredible start. Did not get laid up with any of the obstacles through it. And Yaz, dude, with another first ever win. Jay Miller, Paul Carr, great run. Rob Somerville in 5th, Doug Phil in 6th. Doug Phil was a contender in both of those. MC Stormy, shout out to MC Story, always in the chat. Dea at 8, Miller Time 1980, and Dino Apostolopoulos. Hey, shout out Timothy Stolber, a new member of the channel. Shout out to you, man. Thanks so much for the support. We will do a quick run through the rest of the marbles and the full as soon as Brent Harlock pops in as the final marble through today. All right. Well, that was fun. I'm actually glad we did it again. Yaz, dude, congratulations. Send us an email at winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. We'll make an arrangement to get you set up with one of our hoodies. And as we roll through all of these the performances, Murat with a second place. That's the best we've ever had for an added marble, I do believe. Who else do we have? Dalton Schoen, 18th. Gitch. Oh, Ross came in and Rob Booze is going to be choked. He run. Oh, and Bozeman had a great run too. That's sort of the great rivalry between those two. They always go head to head in it. Willie Jefferson, 27th. Nicely done. Mac Richter in there. We see Donnie Boy, Frosty Winnipeg, Shane, as we continue through Moose 3, Todd M, McGoran, Chris Vermette, my pal Fertani. What's up, Todd? What else we got? Rickdale Productions, Leanne, Pie Boy, Waiters 27, Prairie Boy. Prairie Boy was right in the first one, not so much the second one. Dave the Fantasy, 75th overall. Double D, Darren Dunn, getting ready for the Derby. He finishes at 86th today. Continue down some old favorites: Manny Fran, One Bird, B.A. Split, Theo Seegers, Mitch WHT. Hacksaw came in at 111th. Not too bad. All the way down to our final marble. Eddie Tait, tough one for Ed. Hopefully the Bombers do better tomorrow in Calgary than Ed did in today's marble race today, finishing 130. And all the way down to the bottom of it. Folks, great stuff today. Thanks to all the guests. It was a packed show. We do want to get out so we can get the podcast up for people that might want to be listening. If they're heading out of town on the way to the lake, wherever you are this weekend, have a great time. Do it safely. Don't drink and drive. And join us on Tuesday for a full recap of the weekend. The Bombers, latest on the National Hockey League offseason. If anything happens, chances are it'll break at about Friday night, 10 p.m., heading into the long weekend, like the Kachuk trade last week. And most of all, enjoy yourselves. Gold Eyes for the next 3 days. Valor FC tomorrow. Big Bomber game tomorrow as well. 6 p.m. We'll be all over it, and we'll chop it up for you on Tuesday's edition coming out of the long weekend for the 1st of August on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks for being with us, gang. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.